Chapter 28. Emily opened her eyes, allowing the light to enter her pupils for the first time since she'd blacked out after being hit by the orange men's energy beams. It took a full second for her mind to catch up to what she was seeing and feeling. She was on her back and looking up at a distinctive LED lighting fixture with unique add-on decorations, strings of Navajo Indian protection beads hanging from the supports in between the track lights. These facts told her where she was, in Dwayne and Nora's kitchen, lying on the center island. She tried to sit up, but found her shoulders and arms were pinned down by two sets of strong hands, orange hands to be exact, hands belonging to a pair of enormous orange men. "Let me go!" she screamed, wildly kicking her legs about. She rocked her hips and arched her back, but the muscle men holding her down were too strong. She could feel the edges of the tile countertop tearing against the skin on her back, her naked back. Emily craned her neck to look down across her body and saw that someone had removed her clothes while she was unconscious. "Someone help me!" she cried as she continued her struggle against the powerful hands holding her at bay. She closed her eyes, sucked in a deep breath, and screamed as loud as she could. "Derek! Jim! Help me! Please!" When she opened her eyes again, her vision drew to a long focus beyond her growing belly and her feet. Something new caught her attention, 3 cocoons of blue energy hanging on the far wall. Emily stopped her resistance and gasped when she realized what she was looking at. The bodies of Jim, Dwayne, and Derek. All 3 of them were stuck up against the wall, just beyond the far side of the breakfast table. Each of her friends was trapped inside his own blue energy cocoon, with their stiff, motionless faces looking back at her. She didn't know if they were alive or dead, but the sudden pain in the pit of her stomach told her what was already obvious, that everyone was in dire trouble. Emily followed the beams of energy pulsating down from the cocoons. The trail led to a glowing box about the size of a cigarette case. It was sitting in the center of the table and sending out the streams of blue energy at her friends. She figured the device was designed to keep the men pinned to the wall in a body-length force field. On the left side of the table were Dwayne's shotgun and Jim's handgun, both sitting only a few feet away from the men, but utterly useless. A third orange man appeared just beyond her feet, sliding in from the right. He opened a metal briefcase and put it on the right edge of the table. Emily had a sideways view of the naked man and his technology as he put his palm against the swirling surface. After a 2 count, he stepped back and waited with an open palm. A moment later, a new item morphed into shape and rose out of the case and landed in his hand. It was a long cucumber-like device Emily hadn't seen before. Orange Man turned the case to face her, then his body. He gazed at her with a blank expression on his chiseled face for a few moments before turning his attention to the chrome-colored tube in his hands. He fiddled with it until a 2-pronged tip materialized on the end closest to Emily. His hands made a twisting motion, then the end of the device crackled with bolts of electricity between its 2 extended points. "What is that?" she yelled at him, resuming her thrashing on the center island. She tried to flash on him and get a read on his intent, but all she got back was a buzzing sound and a feeling of dread. He was either blank inside, or her gift of second sight wasn't working properly. The orange men holding her down let go of her in an instant before a beam of energy shot out from the device and hit her square in the chest. When the energy entered her body, she felt the skin around the impact site go numb as she lost all control over her limbs. Her legs and arms straightened out in a flash, and so did her back, pinning her helplessly to the counter surface. She didn't see a blue cocoon of energy around her body like with her friends on the wall, nor was the beam from Orange Man's device still firing. Whatever they'd just done to her was something different, but still designed to keep her passive and under control. But for what? Several minutes earlier. Nora made her way down the hallway to the left and came upon a dead end after a series of 90-degree corners. "Better be a door around here somewhere," she mumbled. When she walked up to the wall, it changed shape to reveal a doorway as expected. She put her hand out to activate the door's dissolution and waited while it rippled and vanished. When she brought her eyes up to resume her trek forward, They locked on to someone coming into view from the right, just on the other side of the door. Someone with a big head covered in boils and sores. Nora gasped at the grotesque sight and brought the screwdriver up like a knife in her left hand. The face of the person across from her lit up in fright as he or she raised their hands high. Nora didn't hesitate, throwing a quick punch with her right hand, then jumping on the back of the person after they hit the deck. She pulled the freak's neck up and tucked the makeshift knife against the skin on their neck. "If you scream or resist, I'll slice your throat. Do you understand?" The person nodded. "I do." It was a man's voice, though Nora didn't feel the man's jaw or throat muscles move. "What do you want?" the man asked her. "I need you to get me out of here." "I can do that. Just don't hurt me, please." She tightened her grip on him. "I won't, as long as you do exactly what I say. You feel me?" The man nodded. "Which way to the nearest exit?" she asked. "Straight ahead. 2 more corridors. It's on the other side of C&C. "C&C? What's that?" "Command and Control. It's our operations center." "Is it guarded?" "Guarded? Heavens no. There's no need. This is only an embarkation." "Well, obviously that's not true. Next time you might want to post some guards," Nora said, interrupting the man while sliding off him. She didn't care what kind of facility she was in. The only thought on her mind was getting the hell out of there and back to her kids. "Now get up slowly, and no sudden moves." The man did as she asked, keeping his hands out in front of him. "Lead the way," Nora said, keeping the tip of the curved blade pressed against the soft underside of his neck. They made 2 more corners and went through another automatic door. Inside was the Command and Control Center, just like her prisoner had said. They entered together in the back right corner of a sprawling room and stopped their feet. The area was filled with technology and more of the ugly, big-headed people, at least 24, all facing away and working their respective control stations. Each was wearing some kind of visor across their eyes and making rapid hand swipes and other movements while looking up at a transparent video screen hanging in front of them. There was a lot of chatter in the room, but Nora had a hard time keying in on any one voice. She heard something about flanking vectors and extraction protocols, but there were too many people talking at the same time to make out much more. She swung her head left and noticed a recess in the wall where the overhead lights couldn't reach. She nudged her captive to get moving and whispered into his ear, "Move to the corner and keep quiet." He did as she asked, moving slowly and quietly until they were standing in the darkened alcove. The new location gave Nora a better view of the room and its activity thanks to an open seam down the middle of the operators and their equipment. She could see a round platform out in front of the control stations with a pair of men standing to the side of it. Lights flashed around the raised base, and she could see ripples of blue energy bubbling in the ceiling above it. Her eyes flared when she realized who the men in line were. Orange men, both of them wearing nothing but a stiff, square jaw. Each man was carrying a metal briefcase. She watched the first orange man step forward and put the case on a smaller secondary platform. A robot-like arm swung down from the side wall and grabbed the case, holding it up and changing its angle a few degrees. A second robot arm came into view, but this one had a vial of orange liquid in its grasp. She figured it was the same stuff she found in the storage room containers. The first arm opened a side compartment along the spine of the case, and the second arm slipped the vial inside before closing the hatch. The case seemed to glow for a second before the first robot arm put the case back on the secondary platform and retracted to its starting position along the wall. Nora figured the orange man would grab the briefcase, but he didn't. Instead, he stepped up on the main platform and spun around to face the bank of control stations and techs lined up between her and him. She could now see every inch of his front. All of it was impressive. If she wasn't under such duress at the moment, she might have blushed at the sight of his sculptured, muscular body and his dangling privates. "What are they doing?" she asked the man in her grasp. "Preparing for incursion." "You mean like an invasion?" He nodded. "Looks like they're sending in 2 units for this part of the mission, or 2 more. We don't know how long this incursion has been in process." "Where?" "It depends on the mission specs." She watched the base of the platform light up in a sea of crackling blue energy. It started at his feet and then worked its way up his body until it covered him from head to toe. A second later, a bright flash of white light hit her eyes, and when it was gone, so was the orange man and the blue energy. Next, the briefcase did the same, though it took longer for the energy wave to rise up and consume it before it vanished. An instant later, she noticed a brightness change on the video screen hanging in front of the technician closest to her. His screen lit up with a brilliant flare of blue speckles. The view on the display changed from one of mostly text and numbers to a shot of the briefcase materializing on what appeared to be grass. Just then, an orange-colored hand came into camera range and picked up the case. "Is that the view from the orange man?" she asked. "Yes." Each traveler's feed streams back to its handler. Nora was about to ask another question, but stopped when she saw something familiar on the screen. There was a car parked in a driveway. It looked like Dwayne's Impala. "Hey, that's my house," she whispered in anger. "Must be the focus of the operation," the man answered. The orange man passed Dwayne's car and entered the front of the house, then went through the living room. Nora couldn't tear her eyes from the screen, worrying if someone close to her was still inside the home. "Are all of them being sent to my house?" "Yes, for tactical containment reasons and for efficiency. It takes a lot of power to open up and initiate an incursion, and we're on very short supply. Embarkations are serialized to keep the costs and utilization down, though they may adjust the target coordinates a few meters either way for landing and security purposes." Nora heard his answers, but stopped listening when she saw the orange man enter her kitchen. He put the briefcase on the breakfast table, on the opposite side of the table from a shotgun and pistol. The center of the table was taken up by a small box glowing with energy. Orange Man put his massive palm to its surface, then stepped back with an outstretched hand. A cylindrical tube appeared from inside the case and landed in his grip. Then he spun the case 90 degrees to the left and did the same with his eyes, bringing the camera view around with him. Nora gasped when she saw Emily being held down on the center island by more of the orange men. "What are they doing?" "Unclear. I haven't been read into the mission specs. Could be an interrogation." "How do I stop this?" she asked, bringing her eyes down from the screen. The second orange man, standing in line, began to move toward the embarkation platform. "You can't stop it." Nora couldn't accept those words. Not now. Not with the safety of her friends and family on the line. She had to do something. "There has to be a way," she said, pressing the knife a little harder to his neck. "Come on, think. Otherwise, why should I keep you alive right now?" The tone of his whisper voice changed to a higher octave, and his words carried more air in them. "Well, you could try deactivating the energy stream. Then they'd have to restart the entire process after a thorough recalibration. It might buy you a few minutes, but that's all." "Okay, and how would I do that?" "I'm not sure. It's all automated once the incursion has been balanced for the mass being sent. Unless you have system access, I don't—" Right then, she remembered how she'd gotten there, by interfering with the energy stream and changing the mass. It gave her an idea. She stepped back and gave her escort a hard karate chop across the side of his ugly neck. He hit the floor in a thud, freeing her to take action. She ripped off the poncho covering her body and took off running. It only took a few seconds to sprint down the middle aisle of the control stations and arrive at the platform. The second orange man was covered in blue up to his nose when she tossed the knife away and launched herself at him head first, with her right forearm and shoulder leading the way. Chapter 29. Emily screamed as the newest orange man to arrive came closer to her with the chrome-colored tube in his hands. She wanted to get up and run, but couldn't, not after being paralyzed by the energy beam from the neck down. He twisted the device again, this time changing the color of the energy arcing between the two prongs on the end. It was now a solid neon green color and much brighter than before. He held it up and watched the tip as a new metal piece grew out of the center. It looked like an ice pick, and it kept growing. When its point passed through the beam, it seemed to catch hold of the green energy and pull it forward until the new implement was sticking out about 8 inches long. One of the orange men who had been holding her down came into view with another briefcase. He opened it, putting his hand against the surface, and waited until it gave him a red object about the size and shape of a baseball. He brought it over to Emily and held it an inch above her stomach. The ball immediately softened and dripped down from his hand like a batch of melting taffy, landing on her navel. "What are you doing to me?" she shrieked, watching the red substance elongate and spread out, slowly covering her entire midsection before easing its way around to her back. Emily screamed again, even though she couldn't feel any of the shimmering material that looked like red mercury. She figured it had wrapped around her entire torso, front and back. The newest orange man continued his advance, passing by Emily's feet and moving to her right side. He brought the chrome device up and held it like a knife, then turned it around and aimed it at her belly. "Stop it!" she yelled at him. "In position for extraction," the man said, looking at her stomach and sounding like he was reporting to someone in authority. "Waiting to go green on your mark." Emily realized what he was about to do with the energy device. "No, you can't do this. Not my baby. Please, no!" He brought the tip of the energy knife closer to her, then stopped his advance. He looked up and across her torso as his eyes changed their focus into a long stare. It was as if he was waiting for someone to give him the all clear to proceed. Emily once again tried to get a read on him when he glanced at her for a moment, but failed. He was cold and dark on the inside, giving her nothing. She was about to scream again, but stopped when a voice spoke up from deep inside her consciousness. "Mom, what's happening?" "Julius," she shot back in her thoughts, feeling thankful he was still alive. She looked down at her belly and noticed it was larger than before. She didn't know if the red mercury was causing it or if Julius had grown exponentially in the past few minutes. "Is someone trying to hurt us?" he asked, using a much more deliberate and determined voice. The change in tone and his full command of vocabulary gave her the answer. It wasn't the red mercury making her stomach bigger. It must have been her son. He was developing faster than she ever thought possible. There was no doubt he was getting stronger, smarter, and more aware, too. She could feel it oozing out of him and crawling across their mental connection. All of it told her she couldn't keep hiding the real world from him, not for very much longer. It was time to be honest and start her teachings, like any good mother should. "Yes, honey, some men are here. I'm not sure what they want, but I need you to stay strong and be ready to help me. Can you do that for Mommy?" "Okay, but I'm really scared." "I know, baby. Me too. But we need to stick together and be ready to fight back." "Do you want me to reach into their minds and see what they want from us?" "You can do that?" "Yes, I've been doing it. That's why I ran away and hid for a while. I knew they were coming." "I'm glad you did, sweetheart. But right now, we need to jump away, but I can't seem to get it started. Can you help me do it?" "Yes, I think so." "Good, because we need to jump right now." Orange Man spoke up, bringing his eyes back to her stomach. "Affirmative. Extraction commencing." "Stop! You're going to hurt my baby!" Emily screamed, hoping to delay the procedure long enough for Julius to initiate a jump. Just below her navel, the red mercury spread apart to expose her skin as Orange Man brought the energized tip of the device closer. Julius spoke up again. This time his voice sounded unsure and thready. "Mom, I can't seem to start the jump. I don't understand. I did it before." "Must have been the energy beam that hit us," she told him, "or the red mercury. They must have done something so we can't jump. But you still need to try again, honey. Hurry, please. We can't give up." The Orange Man lowered the tip of the energy blade and made contact. Her skin started to sizzle, but there was no pain. She watched the man's device send a small wisp of smoke into the air, which in turn sent the scent of burning flesh to her nostrils. Emily put her head back and looked up at heaven. "Please, God, no. Don't let them take my baby." Nora felt her body slam into the ground and flop on its side. She opened her eyes and ignored the headache thundering in her skull. 4 tapered chair legs and a thick wooden pedestal were in front of her. She immediately got to her feet and looked around in a flash to get her bearings. She was in her kitchen, standing naked between the breakfast table and the center island. 3 orange men were in the room, hovering around Emily on the center island. The young girl's stomach was covered in something red, and one of the men was aiming an instrument at her midsection. Nora snapped her head around to the right and noticed a metal box on the table shooting blue energy at the wall. She followed the beams up and saw 3 blue cocoons above her. A jolt of adrenaline coursed through her heart when she saw the face of her husband inside one of them. Jim Miller and Derek were in the other 2. 4 feet ahead of her was the orange man that she'd flown into on the embarkation platform. His head and neck were sticking out of the tile floor, and so were one forearm and hand. Her body block maneuver had done its job again, somehow delivering her safely. She didn't understand how it all worked, but didn't have time to think about it. She grabbed the shotgun from the table and cocked it before firing a blast at the metal box on the table. The device flew apart in pieces, making the energy beams stop instantly. The 3 cocoons vanished, allowing the bodies of Dwayne, Jim, and Derek to slide down the wall to the floor. Nora turned the shotgun around and cocked it again. This time, she ran at the orange man holding the tubular device and fired the gun at close range to make sure she didn't hit Emily with any of the pellets. The blast hit the man square in the right cheek, tearing his face apart. He flew into the hickory cabinets and dropped hard. Before she could aim and fire again, one of the other 2 orange men grabbed the shotgun by the barrel and ripped it from her hands. He put it on the counter as the other man swung a powerful backhand and hit her square on the cheek. The force sent Nora flying sideways into the refrigerator, smashing her rib cage against the door handle. She hit the floor and gasped for air before the 2 remaining men picked her up by the armpits and wedged her against the fridge. The man on her right focused his blood-red eyes on her chest and drew back his muscular arm. His fingers went into the shape of a claw as he brought his arm forward. Nora closed her eyes and began a silent prayer, realizing he was going to rip her heart from her chest. If this was her last moment on Earth, she was going to go out thinking about God and heaven while praying for the safety of her family. Just then, a gunshot rang out, then another and another. The pressure around her arms disappeared, and she felt her body slide down the refrigerator door. When she opened her eyes, she saw Jim Miller standing a few feet away in a firing position with a smoking pistol out in front of his body. The 2 men who'd been holding her were now on the floor with the other one, all of them bleeding from wounds in their heads. Dwayne ran over and grabbed the shotgun from the counter and turned it around while cocking another round into the chamber. Derek grabbed Nora by the waist and pulled her behind Dwayne and Jim as they opened fire on the 3 orange men sprawled on the floor. More rounds went into them, spraying the area with copious amounts of their blood. "Don't forget their briefcases," she said, tapping both of them on the shoulder and pointing. "Good idea," Miller said, as he and Dwayne spun around and fired. A second later, their technology blew apart from the force of the remaining rounds. When the shooting stopped, Dwayne dropped the shotgun and turned to Nora. He hugged her tightly, then gave her a soft kiss on the cheek before letting her go. "Are you okay, honey?" "Yeah, sort of," she said, flexing her jaw and rubbing her side. "But we need to get out of here before they ramp up and send more. We only have a few minutes, I'm afraid." Nora went quickly to Emily and stood next to her, checking her vitals. "I'm so happy to see you," Emily said, giving her a compassionate smile while Nora continued her cursory exam. "I thought we lost you forever." "That's never going to happen, my dear sweet girl. I'm tougher than I look," Nora answered, with a slight grin on her lips. "Where did you go? Did you see them?" "I'm not sure where I went, but I'm back now, and that's all that matters," she said, studying the red substance covering the girl's midriff and her swollen abdomen. "But I'm a little worried about you right now. Can you sit up?" "No, I can't move. Everything is numb from my neck down. Plus, I don't feel so good. What's wrong?" "My head's all woozy, and I'm having a hard time focusing. I see 2 of you right now." Nora turned to Jim. "We need to get her to a hospital, and I mean right now. Can you take her to the car for me? Shouldn't we call an ambulance?" "No, we can't stay here and wait. They'll be coming back, and probably in greater numbers." Miller nodded and started toward the center island, but Derek stepped in front of him. "Nobody touches her except me. That's my baby in there." Miller raised his hands and backed away. "She's all yours, kid." "What do you need me to do?" Dwayne asked Nora. "Find the car keys and then bring me some clothes." "Like what, jeans and a t-shirt?" "Yeah, that's fine. Anything will do." "What about Em?" "A blanket will suffice, but hurry." Derek stood next to the center island and put his hand on Emily's cheek. "Hey, you babe." Emily looked back at him with her eyes wide and her lips soft. "Hey, you beautiful." Derek nodded at the red substance covering her midsection. "Does it hurt?" "No, but I can't really feel anything." "What is it?" "I don't know, but they were going to use it to take my baby. Our baby." "Over my dead body," he said with a clenched jaw, feeling a swell of rage building inside. Dwayne returned with a set of keys dangling in one hand and a small stack of clothes and a folded blanket in the other. Nora took the blanket and draped it over Emily's body. Then she started dressing in the sweatpants and t-shirt Dwayne had brought for her. Derek looked at Emily. "You about ready to go?" "Yep, but you're gonna have to help me. I can't move." "I know. I got you. Don't worry. Stay away from the red stuff. I don't think you should touch it." "I won't," he said, scooping his arms under her upper back and legs before lifting her up. "Derek?" Emily asked, this time in a weak voice. "Yeah," he answered, looking down at her. I'm sorry for everything," she mumbled, before her eyes rolled back in her head. A moment later, her eyelids closed and her head slumped to the right. "Em, stay with me. Em," he snapped, jiggling her slightly in his arms. He waited a few seconds and then said the same words while jostling her again. She didn't move or answer him either time. Derek whirled around to Nora, who was slipping on the second shoe. "Hey, something's wrong with Emily." Nora checked the pulse on her neck with 2 fingers on her right hand. "Is she going to be okay?" Derek asked, fearing the worst. "Her heart rate is steady, but until we get a better look at her, it's too soon to say for sure," Nora said, turning to Dwayne. "Can you open the front door for Derek?" "I'll get it," Miller said, picking up the shotgun from the floor and tossing it to Dwayne. He tucked the pistol inside the back of his pants. "We're going to need more ammo. I'm guessing you have some around here somewhere?" Dwayne nodded. "Roger that. Top shelf, master closet. I'll be back in 2 shakes." Miller led Derek out the front door and across the grass to the Impala. He opened the back door and stood aside as Derek slid Emily in, being careful not to drop her or touch the red stuff coating her stomach. When Derek stood back up, he heard the faint wail of sirens in the distance. "Damn it, cops!" "It was going to happen eventually, even at this hour," Miller said. "I'm surprised it took this long." "Yeah, but still, the last thing we need right now is to deal with the police." Derek saw Nora and Dwayne running out of the house. Dwayne's hands were filled with boxes of ammo as he flew around to the driver's side of the sedan. He put some of the boxes on top of the cab and slid them across the Chevy to Miller, one at a time. "Where to?" Dwayne asked Nora, pulling the door open and holding the car keys up. "Monteroli's clinic." "Wouldn't a full-blown hospital be better?" "It would, but I'm afraid if those orange men come back for M, the hospital is the first place they'll look." "I hadn't thought of that." "That's why I do the thinking around here," Nora said, driving her point home with a head tilt. "Yes, dear," he said with a roll of his eyes and a glance at Miller. Miller laughed. "Don't be sarcastic, Dwayne. Now give me your cell phone. I want to make sure Dr. Monteroli is there and ready for us." Dwayne nodded, getting into the driver's seat while Miller bolted to the front passenger seat. Derek and Nora hopped in the back seat with Emily, each sitting on opposite ends of her and her blanket. Dwayne fired up the car in a flash, then turned his head around as he put the Impala in reverse and backed up. "What about our kids?" he asked Nora during their short trip to the street. "They should be safe for now. You can go get them later. First, we need to make sure Emily is okay. I don't know what that red substance is or what it's doing to her, but we need to figure out a way to get it off her, and I mean fast. That can't be good for the baby, or her for that matter." Chapter 30. Emily knew she was dreaming when she found herself wearing a floppy sun hat and a skimpy red bikini while lounging on a cozy deck chair aboard a towering cruise ship. She could feel the gentle sway of the great ocean liner as it cut across the wind-driven fetches. It was on its way to some tropical destination, sending sprays of salt water over the bow and into the crisp, clean air. She imagined a tapestry of endless beauty waiting for her and the rest of the passengers at the end of this magical voyage. Everywhere she looked, she saw scores of children running and playing, not a single adult anywhere. The sprawling deck was filled with boys giggling and girls shrieking, while the horde frolicked under the warmth of the midday sun. She couldn't help but marvel at the children and their unbridled innocence. Their smiles were infectious, and so too was their spirit, all of them living in the moment, without a care in the world. It reminded her of her own childhood, long before the night of the taking. It was back when her life was simple and on course toward something special. Back before she learned how cruel life could truly be. Back before fate had reached out and touched her soul, twisting her existence into something dark and sinister. A moment later, her dream changed without warning. Now she was at her classroom desk, sitting in the last row of a sparsely decorated classroom of Dysart High School. The floppy sun hat was gone, but the red bikini remained. She panicked, leaning forward and covering herself with her hands and arms. The teacher standing in the front of the room wasn't Mrs. Thompson, as she expected. It was her mom, Candy Hart. "Mom?" she said in a cautious tone, looking left and then right to see who else was around, but there weren't any other students in the room. It was only her and her mother. Candy's face was flushed with a deep scowl and a pair of fierce eyes as she paced across the front of the classroom with an extra-long yardstick in her hand. "Emily," her mother said, before turning her gaze at Emily and firing a disappointed look. It was the type of heart-squeezing stare that mothers get right before they are about to scold you for coming home after curfew. The kind of stare that penetrates deep into your soul, where the truth hides beneath a bed of lies. "You haven't been following the rules. How many times do we need to go over this? How many times?" Candy tapped the yardstick against the blackboard 3 times, and then a list of 10 rules magically appeared, one by one, like a special effect in the movies. Each of them was written in white chalk with asterisks placed in front. Emily read through the list from top to bottom, even though she already knew the list by heart. No friends. Don't tell anyone about your time jumps, ever. Keep moving. Fly under the radar. No cops. Never use your real name. Don't get involved. Nothing good ever comes of it. Travel light and stay fast. Always check your stash. No men. No romance. No boyfriends. "Now, let's recap," Candy continued. "In the past few weeks of Emily time, you've broken almost every one of these rules. And look where it's gotten you, young lady. People have been hurt, and a few have even died because you can't follow these 10 simple rules. And to top it all off, now I find out that you're pregnant. Tell me, how on earth did that happen?" Emily shrugged. She wanted to say she was sorry, but didn't. She knew from experience that when her mom had that look in her eyes, she'd better not interrupt her. Otherwise, the punishment would just get 10 times worse. Candy continued her diatribe. "Now look at you. Your hair's a mess, and you're running around high school in a bikini. What were you thinking when you left the house this morning?" Emily shook her head and dropped her eyes, but didn't respond. It was all too intense. She knew she was dreaming, but it didn't make the situation any easier. Moms know exactly how to lay on the guilt, choosing the perfect words to lather it on thick. Candy broke the yardstick over her knee. "Who in their right mind dresses like that? Especially a pregnant, homeless teenage girl. Didn't I teach you better than that?" "Stop badgering her," came a young girl's voice from behind Emily. Emily turned to see who it was. A smile took over her lips when she saw who it was, her fiery, kleptomaniac friend, Junie, and she was standing by the back wall of the room with her hands on her hips. She looked to be about age 12, the same age she'd been when Emily first met her in the homeless shelter. Her hair was in pigtails and wrapped with cute little pink bows. Junie's sassy side was in full bloom, with her head moving from side to side and in rhythm with the words she spoke. "Emily is the best friend I've ever had, and if you were a real mom, you'd know how good she really is." Another voice spoke up an instant later. This time, it was a male's voice, and it was coming from her right. "Yeah, Emily is special. Don't you know that? You shouldn't yell at her like that. It's not fair. She can't help what's happening to her." The familiar boy's voice brought her eyes around, filling her heart with anticipation. It was Sheldon, the brilliant computer tech from the library. The same awkward boy who loved Twinkies and who always seemed to go out of his way to help her whenever she needed it. She was about to wave at him and say hi, but stopped when he raised his arm slowly and pointed to the front of the classroom. Emily turned forward in her seat to face the blackboard. She expected to see her mother standing there with the busted yardstick in her hand, but she was gone. Someone else was now in charge of the class. It was Master Liu, the wise old Chinese man who taught her self-defense after one of her earliest time jumps. She waited for the slight man to say something profound and on point, but he didn't. He only stood there, looking sad and withdrawn, never taking his eyes from her. A second later, the dream changed again. This time she was on a wooden bench in the center of Glassford Park. The sun was warm on her skin, and the sky was a piercing blue color, with fluffs of clouds dotting the view. She took in a deep breath of air, but before she could exhale, a weight landed in Emily's lap. Emily looked down. It was Schrody, the red and white tabby cat who somehow managed to keep following her across time and space. The quantum kitty didn't hesitate, purring his lovable motor while arching his back and rubbing it against the palm of her outstretched hand. He was just as cute and soft as she remembered, making her heart melt when he looked up at her with his soulful blue eyes and meowed. "Hey, Schrody," she said, petting him gently from head to tail. "I've missed you. Where have you been?" Just then, the cat turned his head in a flash and snarled at the bushes on her right. Emily followed the cat's attention and saw 2 tiny bare feet appear from within the bushes. Then she saw a pair of bare legs, a naked waistline, then a torso without clothes. She followed the young kid's body upward and saw the face of a petite boy looking back at her with deep blue eyes and jet-black, wavy hair. His features were delicate and precise, making his face so adorable it could probably re-energize a dying neutron star. "Hi, Mommy," the boy said in a confident voice. "Julius?" "Yes, it's me." Emily stood up from the bench, sending Schrody flying from her lap. The cat hissed, then took off running in the opposite direction. Emily went quickly to her son and knelt down in front of him. She grabbed his hands and squeezed them gently as she held them to her heart. "Oh my God, you're so beautiful." He smiled at her, filling her heart with so much joy that it wanted to burst inside her chest. She wrapped him in a tight hug, never wanting to let go. "I can't believe it's really you." Julius pried her arms loose and backed away. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Mommy, you need to wake up. You can't be here right now." "Why?" "They're coming." "Who's coming?" "The orange men." "Right now?" "No, but soon. You need to warn everyone." "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I can sense them, and their masters. They're on their way back in their ship." Chapter 31. Emily woke from her strange but wonderful dream and forced her eyes open. She tried to hang on to all the details about the dream, but they were fading fast. She made a stab for them before they disappeared forever, but it was no use. The sweetness faded until only a few specks of the dream remained in her memory. She looked around and found that she was on her back and being carried in Derek's arms as he ferried her down a white hallway. There were other people around, people she didn't know, wearing hospital attire and standing to the side as Derek flew by them. Dwayne and Jim were trotting behind Derek with guns in hand, while Nora was on a cell phone and following in last place. "Which way?" Derek said, glancing back to Nora. She took the phone from her ear and answered. "Take the next right, then 2 immediate lefts. Look for a set of double swing doors. Dr. Monteroli and her staff are waiting there, outside of exam 1. Derek's eyes looked down before his next stride and caught Emily's gaze. He smiled. "Where are we?" she asked. "Urgent care on 7th Avenue, he said in a breathy voice as his lungs gasped for another round of air. "The place Nora volunteers at?" "Yup, Dr. Monteroli's clinic. She's the doc who came by my group home and checked out my busted ribs. Do you remember her?" "Yeah, why wouldn't I?" she said with attitude, feeling every one of his choppy strides slam into the back of her neck. "Well, it was a while ago. Wasn't sure if you did." He'd obviously forgotten it had only been a handful of days in Emily time. "You feeling any better, Em?" "I don't know. Maybe a little. I still can't feel anything below my neck. Plus my head's still foggy, and it's a little hard to breathe." "Just hang on. We're almost there," he said, taking 2 quick lefts and coming to a stop a few gallops later. "Let's get her inside," Dr. Monteroli said, holding one of the swing doors open. "Where do you want her?" "On the table is fine." Derek turned sideways and hurried into the examination room, putting Emily on the 6-foot-long stainless steel platform waiting in the center. He straightened her legs out and adjusted the blanket. 3 nurses, 2 males and 1 female, closed in around the table wearing gloves, goggles, gowns, and masks, as was Dr. Monteroli, who joined them. Emily glanced to the left and then the right, seeing a myriad of medical equipment strewn about the room. Some of the technology was mounted on the walls, while the rest sat on rolling carts, including a spread of medical instruments on a stand-up tray next to the table. One of the male nurses wrapped a clear plastic oxygen supply line around the back of Emily's head, over her ears, and tucked it under her nose. The air supply carried a hint of coolness, tickling the skin along the inside of her nostrils as it entered. Next, he clipped some kind of plastic device to the end of her finger. It looked like a high-tech clothespin and had a wire hanging from it that led to a nearby machine. Then he wrapped a blood pressure cuff around her thin bicep. Dr. Monteroli nestled in next to Derek. "I need you to please wait outside, young man. Thank you for your help." Derek shook his head and took Emily by the hand. "No, I'm not leaving her side." "It's all right, babe," Emily said, giving him a forced smile. Even though she was petrified about the red stuff covering her stomach and her paralysis, she didn't want him to worry, nor did she want him to watch whatever the medical staff was going to do next. He'd been through enough today. "I'll be okay. Nora's here with me. You should go take a break. You've earned it." "Are you sure?" "Yes, positive." "Right now, I need all the non-medical personnel to clear this room and take those damn guns with you," Dr. Monteroli said, shooting looks at both Dwayne and Jim Miller. Nora looked at Dwayne. "Take Derek and wait outside. Emily's in good hands. Trust me." Dwayne nodded and corralled Derek with his arm before escorting him outside. Miller went with them. Emily took a deep, struggling breath and let it out slowly as the swing doors closed behind the men. When the 2 doors stopped swaying, a strange tightening sensation took control of her throat. It was as if someone had just chilled her soul, sending an intense feeling of dread into her jaw. She didn't know why, but it felt as though she'd just said goodbye to Derek for the last time. Tears welled in her eyes and ran down the sides of her cheek. "It'll be okay, dear. I promise," Nora said, wiping the tears from Emily's face with the back of her fingers. "We're gonna figure this out." "I hope so," she said, wondering why she hadn't heard from Julius since she'd woken up from her dream. She shot a string of mental images and loving thoughts his way, but her son didn't respond. She hoped he was just hiding again, or better yet, maybe he was asleep and totally unaware of what was going on around him. "I'm really scared," Emily told her friend, praying the red mercury wasn't hurting her son. "I know you are, but we're going to do everything we can to keep you and your baby safe," Nora said, putting on her medical apparel like the others. The second Nora was dressed, Dr. Monteroli removed the blanket. Her nose pinched and her voice stuttered with some kind of mumble before she stepped back. "Any idea what that is?" Nora asked the doctor. Monteroli shook her head. "I've seen a lot of strange things come through those doors in my time, but never anything like this." "Yeah, me either." Monteroli turned her attention to Emily. "So, I understand you're pregnant. How far along are you?" "About a week, give or take." "Only a week? Are you sure? Looks more like about 4 months to me." "Yeah, I'm sure." "Are you in any pain or discomfort?" "No, I really can't feel anything right now. At least, not from the neck down." "Anything else I should know?" "Just that it seems to be getting harder to breathe. Not sure what that means, but I thought I better tell you." "It's important to tell us everything," Nora said, taking Emily by the hand. "It's possible the swelling is from the substance around her abdomen," Monteroli said to her assistants, bringing the overhead light into position over Emily's torso. She looked at the female nurse. "There may be fluid buildup, or we're looking at a molar pregnancy. We'll need to check her hormone levels before we're done here." The doc's eyes made their way to Emily's. "Have you been experiencing any vaginal bleeding?" "No. Why?" "Just ruling some things out," the doc said, bringing her right hand up with the first 2 fingers extended and pushed together. "I'm going to take a measurement." Emily was about to ask more about the term molar pregnancy, but decided not to, at least not right now. She didn't want to interrupt the doctor as Monteroli put her 2 fingers just above Emily's navel. Then she slid them down a bit and stopped. "Looks like about 16 centimeters. "Is that good or bad?" Emily asked. "It means you're roughly 4 months into your term, assuming there are no other factors involved." "Other factors?" Nora spoke up next. What the doctor means is that you could be having twins or triplets. It would explain the accelerated growth. Emily laughed. Twins? Triplets? Really? Is that what you all think? Nobody responded. No, I'm only having one. Trust me, Emily said with conviction, wanting to change the subject. She couldn't stop her mind from drifting back to the strange term she'd heard a little earlier. So, what's a molar pregnancy? Nora leaned in a little closer than before. Let's not worry about that right now, Em. Let's focus on getting that stuff off you and getting you better. But what is it? I think I should know. Monteroli cleared her throat, acting like her brain was searching for the proper words. It's a very rare condition, and frankly, one that we usually don't see in mothers under 35. Yeah, well, I'm not anywhere near that age. Not in my time, anyway. Which is why I don't want you to worry about it, Nora said, looking at the doctor for a moment before looking back at Emily. We have other things to focus on right now. That works for me. Nobody wants the red mercury off more than me. Do whatever you need to do, as long as my baby is healthy and safe. That's all I care about. That's our hope too, Nora said, giving Emily a thin smile, though it looked fake and forced. Emily detected a hint of worry in Nora's eyes. I know you think there's something wrong with my baby, but there's not. My belly's getting big because my son's growing really fast. Well, it could be a girl too, Nora said in a soft voice, like she was trying to keep Emily calm. And I'll bet she'll be just as beautiful as you. Oh, he's a boy, all right. I know that for a fact. I've even seen his face and talked to him. He's beautiful and perfect in every way, just like his daddy. Monteroli shot Nora a sideways glance, then looked at the female nurse. Let's get her started on a liter of normal saline and a push of Ativan, she told the female nurse. How much? The brunette asked, looking to be in her 30s and thick around the middle. Well, there's not much to her, so let's start with 1 milligram. Any more and it could be risky, for her and for the baby. Yes, doctor, the nurse said, turning away and heading out of Emily's vision. Are you allergic to any medication? Monteroli asked Emily. Any history of glaucoma or nervous system disorders in you or your family? Emily shook her head after sifting through her memories. How about kidney or liver disease? Asthma? Nope. Are you on any medication right now or doing any drugs? I don't take meds and I never do drugs, ever. What about alcohol? I don't drink either. Well, except for only once, Emily said, seeing the nurse return with an IV bag and a syringe. What's all that? Ativan and some fluids to keep you hydrated. What's Ativan? Emily asked, turning her head to the doc. It's to help you relax, Monteroli said. You seem a bit agitated. Agitated? Of course I'm agitated. I've got this red goo all over me and I can't move anything from the neck down. Plus the whole hard-to-breathe thing ain't helping either. You'd be a little agitated too if you were in my shoes. Please, you need to calm down so we can treat you properly. No drugs, Emily fired back, looking at Nora. She was starting to regret letting them send Derek out of the room. Promise me, Nora, no drugs. Please, don't let them give me anything that might hurt my baby. Nora didn't respond, looking at Monteroli for a moment, then back at Emily. Please, Nora, I'm not in any pain. I'll calm down, I promise, Emily said, trying to take in a series of deep breaths. The oxygen came to her lungs, but it was a fight to get the air inside. But no drugs, please. You can't let them do that to me. There's no telling how it might affect Julius. So you have a name for your baby already, the doc said, furrowing her brow for a moment. Yeah, it's no big deal. People name their babies ahead of time, right? Some do, yes, but typically after they've had an ultrasound and know the sex of the baby. Like I said, I already know he's a boy, and yes, I've given him a name. I know this all sounds totally weird, but trust me, it's not. Not if you knew the rest of my story. But we don't have time for all this now, she said, suddenly remembering the warning Julius gave her in the dream. I just need you to get this red crap off me so we can all get the hell out of here. Easy now, Nora said, putting a hand on Emily's forehead and stroking the skin gently with the vinyl glove. Seriously, Nora, we need to go. They're coming back. Who's coming? The doc asked from the right. The orange men, Emily answered, still looking at Nora. Are you sure? Nora said. Yeah, Julius told me. He can sense them. They're coming back in their spaceship. Okay, I think I've heard enough, the doctor said, nodding to the male nurses. Just the on-duty staff from here on out. Let's get that push started. Stat. Just on-duty staff? What does that mean? Emily asked Nora. The male nurses pushed in close to Nora and held out their arms in the direction of the double swing doors. It means Dr. Monteroli wants me to wait in the hall with the rest of our group. If I stay here, I'll just be in their way, and we don't want that now, do we? No, you can't go. Don't leave me in here all alone. Please, Nora, stay with me. Please, I need you. It'll be okay, Em. Dr. Monteroli is one of the best physicians in all of Arizona. I trust her with my life, and you should too. No, Nora, please, don't go. Please. I have to, Em. We need to let these wonderful people do their job and help you get better. I'll be just outside, okay? Emily didn't want to agree, but she realized she didn't have a choice. Not with her paralysis. There was no way to get up and run, nor could she fight back. Plus, she couldn't tell if there was a time jump building inside, or if one was even possible with the red crap stuck to her. It all pointed to one thing. She was helpless and at the medical team's mercy. If she continued to fight them, they'd stop listening and take even stronger measures to control her. She needed to defuse the situation. Okay, Nora, but stay by the door. Otherwise, I'm going to totally freak out here. I will, I promise. I'll only be 2 seconds away if you need me, Nora said, removing her protective gloves, mask, and goggles as she walked away. She put them in a collection bin near the door. Chapter 32. Nora stepped outside and was instantly surrounded by the guys. It felt like a swarm of locusts had just invaded Rancho de Nora. Derek spoke first. How's Emily? She's a little nervous, but they're giving her something to help her calm down. We can't just leave her in there all alone. One of us should be in there, Derek said, starting for the double doors. Nora stopped him. No, we need to let the medical team do their job. If you go in there, you'll just be in the way. Emily's in good hands. But what if they have questions about what happened to her? If they do, Emily can tell them what they need to know. Otherwise, the doctor will come ask us directly. With that said, I don't think that's going to happen because I filled Dr. Monteroli in on the way here. She's pretty well up to speed. It's for the best, Dwayne said to Derek, rubbing the back of his neck with his hand. I know, but it's hard to just stand here. I feel so useless. We all do, Miller added. But there's one more thing, Nora said, pausing to make eye contact with everyone. Emily said they're coming back, the Orange Men, in one of their ships. Derek's eyes flew wide. Seriously? In a ship? How does she know? Miller asked. Nora exhaled, taking time to let the words line up in her head. Well, that's the strange part. She told me that her baby told her. What? Derek asked. Nora nodded. Apparently she can communicate with her son. I'm not sure whether that's true or not, but Emily certainly believes it. But the question is, do you believe her? Dwayne asked in a slow, steady voice. Yes, I think on some level I do, or maybe I just want to believe. Either way, there's no way to prove any of this, but we need to take precautions nonetheless. We all know that when it comes to Emily, normal rules don't apply. Dwayne nodded. You got that right. Plus, if her son has special gifts like her, there's no telling what he can do. Yep, agreed, Nora said, letting her shoulders slump as her mind turned to thoughts about her brief time in the Orange Men's control room. Earlier, she tried to explain some of her experience to Dwayne, Jim, and Derek on the ride to the clinic, but couldn't find the proper words. It was all a little hard to believe, even for her. She'd seen it with her own eyes, but just because you see something firsthand doesn't mean you really believe it. I'm not sure what's all going on here, but that poor girl is under a tremendous amount of stress. I don't know how she keeps herself together. That's why one of us should be in there, Derek said, again taking steps toward the exam room doors. Dwayne reacted quickly, grabbing Derek's arm and stopping his advance. You gotta let them do their thing in there. Emily will be fine. She's tougher than all of us put together. That's for damn sure, Miller said, pulling his sidearm from the tuck inside his pants. He checked the magazine clip and readied the chamber, then looked at Nora. I know you told us earlier that you didn't spend much time investigating the Orange Men's facility, but do you think they're capable of following her here? I don't see how. Normally, I'd agree with you. However, they have been showing up in random places where she is, so they must have a way to track her location. Okay then, Mr. Marine, tell me how, Nora asked with attitude. In the grand scheme of things, does it really matter? Dwayne said, acting like he was stepping in to stop a brewing scuffle. No, not unless there's some way to neutralize it, she answered. Since she travels naked, we know it's not technology-based, otherwise we'd see it on her. They must be using something else. My guess is biological, Miller said. You mean like DNA tracking? Derek asked. Possibly, Miller said. All we know for sure is that they have plenty of advanced tech based on what Nora told us earlier, so we can't rule out anything at this point. Like I said, what does it matter how they're doing it, Dwayne said. Derek nodded. Dwayne's right. It doesn't matter how, just that they are, somehow. It's not like we can do anything about it anyway. Okay then, what do we do now? Nora asked Miller, sounding a little miffed. That's easy. We stay frosty. If they're coming back, we need to be ready. It's really the only option at the moment. Copy that, Dwayne said, raising the shotgun and holding it at an angle across his chest. I'll take first watch. Here? In a public clinic full of women and children? Nora asked Miller, not waiting for him to answer. You can't be serious. We don't have a choice, even with all the civilians on site. We stay close to Emily and protect her. And her baby. My baby, Derek added with confidence. Yes, of course, that's a given. Derek stepped forward. What about me? Don't I need a gun too? Miller dropped his head, hesitating. Then his eyes returned to Derek. All right, but you have to wait until we can pick up the AR-15s I have stashed at my place. For now, we'll rotate shifts and weapons as needed. It's about time we kick some ass, Derek said. Easy sport. Until we know more about their numbers and plan of aggression, we need to slow it down, Miller said, pointing at the doors behind Nora. Our number one goal is to keep that girl in there safe and not get any of us killed in the process. And we can't do that by starting a firefight with limited ammo and weapons. If they do return in a ship, then it seems logical to assume we'll be facing an overwhelmingly superior force. A straight-up fight in a situation like that would be a suicide mission. No, we do this right, and we do it smart, like they taught us in the military. Slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. Small unit tactics are our only hope. Chapter 33. Emily watched the doctor's female assistant inject the anxiety medicine into the IV line, pushing it into her veins at a steady pace. The effects were almost immediate, lessening her pounding heart rate to a trickle of what it had been. Her vision blurred a couple of times before it stabilized. Feeling better? Dr. Monteroli asked, showing Emily two big, kind eyes. Yeah. Much, she answered, flaring her eyebrows and blinking rapidly. But I'm a little woozy. That's normal. It's helping you relax, and it should ease a bit over time. Nothing to be concerned about, the doc said, nodding once before turning her focus to the red substance around Emily's belly. Alan, bring me a red top and a sterile swab. Maybe the lab can identify what this is. Right away, doctor, he said, returning 10 seconds later with a test tube in one hand and a white Q-tip in the other. He gave the swab to Monteroli, then removed the red cap on the end of the tube before holding the glass vial over Emily's stomach. Monteroli slowly inserted the cotton tip into the red substance and moved it around in a tight circle. Emily assumed she was trying to grab a sample of it to put in the test tube. When the doc removed the white swab, there wasn't any sign of red on it. That's odd, the doc said, trying the sample process 2 more times. It won't adhere. I'm not sure how we're going to send a sample off. Emily spoke through the fog in her head. Just get it off me, please. It doesn't matter what it is. I just want it gone. The doctor's voice turned soft. We know you do, Emily. So do we. But to solve this, we need to know what it is and what its intended purpose is. Is there anything else you can tell me? No, not really. Just that they put it on me when they came for my baby. Luckily, Nora showed up before they could take Julius out. Walk me through what they were doing right before Nora showed up. The main guy had some kind of instrument in his hand. It was sparking electricity between its 2 tips. He was just starting to cut into me when Nora rescued me. I could smell my skin burning. Sounds like some kind of laser scalpel, the doctor said, hesitating. Where was the incision point? Do you remember? Emily tried to crane her neck down and point, but she couldn't find enough strength to keep her head up. She let it fall back against the headrest, feeling dizzy. Just beneath my belly button. Then I take it they were cutting directly through the red substance? No. It kind of spread apart when the device came close to it. I don't think that stuff likes electricity. Doctor, I think I have an idea, the female nurse said. What about the paddles? If that substance doesn't like electricity, couldn't we use the defibrillator to force the substance off her? Emily couldn't believe what she was hearing from the nurse. What? You want to shock me? Won't that hurt my baby? She squinted through the blobs in her vision to see the woman's name tag. It said Veronica. Normally it wouldn't, the doctor answered instead of the nurse. Not when administered to the chest cavity. However, we'd need to use it on your abdomen. So it would hurt my baby? Yes, I'm afraid it would. We'd have to position the paddles on either side of you before initiating the charge. That would send the current through your body. And through my baby. Monteroli nodded. That's why it's not an option. Plus, there's the problem of it only being a momentary release of electricity. I'm guessing we're going to need a sustained charge, something we can control and direct to convince the material to release from your body. Why's that, Doctor? Veronica asked. If this material moves away when electricity is introduced, then it stands to reason it would close up again once that electricity is removed from its environment. Looking at the solid coverage around the patient right now, I believe that's what happened. Am I correct, Emily? Yeah, I think so, but I didn't actually see it. When Nora shot the man trying to take my baby, everything just got totally out of control. I'm sorry, Doctor. I really can't say for sure. Nurse Veronica cleared her throat. What about the new Head Start unit we got in last week? If we change the setting from monitor to pacing, wouldn't that let you do what you need to do? It might, Monteroli said, tilting her head and pinching her brow. If we start out with a charge of 30 milliamps and increase the level slowly, then we'll be able to keep the energy low enough to avoid jeopardizing the health of the baby. Like slowly turning up the heat on a frog in a pot of water, the tallest of the two male nurses said. Emily couldn't see all of his name tag from her position, but his name started with the letter J. He was a handsome, dark-haired man with a strong chin and soulful eyes, like Derek, not a hint of wrinkles or gray hair anywhere. That's one way to describe it, the doctor said, but we'll need to increase the rate of impulses to create a near-continuous flow of energy. Otherwise, it'll just close up again once the charge dissipates. If I remember correctly from the training seminar, there's a setting for that, Veronica said with excitement in her voice. Let me get the code chart. She disappeared from Emily's view and came back pushing one of the rolling carts in the room. Sitting on top of it was a device about the size and shape of an iPad with a handle across the top. The left half of the unit featured a vertical computer display, while a turquoise-colored control knob and a set of raised buttons filled the right side. The large control knob and the various colors of the buttons underneath it made it look like a fancy sprinkler clock. A string of numbers from 10 to 200 were positioned evenly around the knob, like power settings. There was also a pair of labels around the knob for monitor and pacing, like Veronica had mentioned. Let's get her on the monitor first, Monteroli said, her eyes transfixed on the nurse's hands. Veronica took one of the colored wires hanging from the unit and peeled the sticky tape off the white pad attached to the end of it. She stuck the pad near the top of Emily's left shoulder and adjusted the position of the wire leading back to the device. The second pad went on the soft tissue of Emily's right shoulder, only a few inches above her armpit. Veronica grabbed the third lead and went to put it on the side of Emily's abdomen, but stopped just short of making contact with the red mercury. Put it on her thigh instead, Monteroli instructed. Veronica nodded before peeling the tape off and sticking it to the upper section of Emily's thigh. Dr. Monteroli fiddled with the buttons on the device that carried a manufacturer's label that said Philips across the top. The light from the computer screen caught Emily's eye, but from her angle, she couldn't see much else on the display. Veronica brought up 2 more leads and removed the adhesive tape. The nurse held them over Emily's navel. Where would you like them, Doctor? That's a good question, the doc said, snatching the wires from the nurse. I'm going to try placing them one on each side. Hey, wait a minute, Emily snapped when she heard what they were going to do. The doctor shook her head. It'll be okay, Emily. I've got it calibrated to the lowest setting. My plan is to only use enough power to convince the substance to let go of you. But you said earlier that sending a charge through my body would hurt my baby. Yes, I did. But that was for defibrillation, which uses a much more powerful charge to restart a patient's heart. For pacing, we only need to use a fraction of that amount to help keep the heart in rhythm. The energy level I'm going to use is in milliamps, and it's nowhere near as strong as what we use for the paddles. You and your baby should be fine. Emily tried to flash on the doctor while the woman was looking at her, but the link never connected. She studied the doctor's eyes and the tone of her voice the old-fashioned way. Her gut was telling her to trust the woman, so that's what she decided to do. She nodded. Okay, go ahead, but please be careful. I will. Monteroli put the first lead pad on the front of Emily, just above the top edge of the red mercury. The second lead went on Emily's back somewhere. Emily couldn't feel it, but based on how far the physician had tilted her body to the left, she figured it probably was in the corresponding spot on her backside. Monteroli slowly rolled Emily back into the supine position. "I'm going to begin the procedure now, so I'll need you to tell me if you feel any discomfort." "Okay, I guess," Emily answered with trepidation, wondering why the doc thought she might feel something when she was paralyzed from the neck down. Maybe the woman expected the pacing charge to yield immediate results and take her paralysis away. Monteroli turned the unit on. "Do you feel anything, Emily?" "No, not a thing." Emily glanced down, but couldn't see much of a change in the size of the red mercury blob. Some of it had moved away a half an inch from the front pad, but the rest was unchanged. "Let's try direct insertion and see what happens," the doc said, taking one of the lead pads and placing it directly into the red material. As soon as the energized pad came close to contact, the substance moved away to open a small area for the lead to make contact with Emily's skin, but the rest of the material remained unchanged. "This isn't going to work. We're going to need a method to affect all of the material at one time. Spot application of electricity isn't the answer here." "Mom, what's going on out there? I feel all tingly," Julia said, finally speaking up telepathically. Emily didn't understand why, but his mental voice sounded tired, like he'd just woken up from a long nap. "It's okay, sweetheart. The doctor's trying to help get the orange men's gooey stuff off Mommy's tummy," she sent back in her thoughts. "How?" "She's using a tiny bit of electricity to see if the gooey material might let go of me, but I need you not to panic or react. Can you do that for Mommy?" "I think so." "That's my brave little boy. Now, I need you to tell me if you feel any pain at all." "Okay, but I'm getting really scared." "Don't worry, Julius. The doctor knows exactly what she's doing." Emily didn't like lying to her son, but she didn't want him to overreact or start a time jump. There was no telling what might go wrong with a jump while she was covered with the red mercury. "All right, let's try easing it up a bit and see what happens. Increasing to 50, Monteroli said, playing with the controls on the device. After a 2 count, she spoke again. "How are you doing, Emily?" Well, I'm fine, but my baby told me he's all tingly from the electricity, so you need to be careful because he can feel what you're doing." Monteroli didn't respond. Emily wasn't sure if the doctor was paying attention or was simply ignoring her comments. "Did you hear me, doctor?" "Yes, Emily, I did, but right now I need you to please relax and keep me informed about any changes you notice." After a short pause, she announced, "Moving to 70 milliamps, now." Emily still couldn't feel anything. However, when she looked down, she could see her feet twitching. "Mom, that hurts!" Julia screamed in her thoughts a few seconds later. "Wait!" Emily yelled at the doctor. "What's wrong?" "Julia says it hurts. You need to stop. You're hurting him." "Okay, powering down now." Emily watched the doctor's fingers work the device, then closed her eyes and concentrated on the new life inside her. "Julius? Honey, are you okay?" "Yeah. But they need to stop, Mommy. That hurts." "I know, darling. I told them to stop. It's okay now, I promise." "Tell them to put us in water first," Julia said. "What?" "Tell them they need to surround us with water, then try the electricity. It's the only way, Mom." "How do you know this?" "I don't know for sure, but I think one of the orange men just told me by accident. If I concentrate really hard, I can see what he sees and hear his thoughts." "From this far away? Without them being here and looking at you?" Emily asked, realizing her son's abilities were far more powerful than hers. "Uh-huh. It just started a little while ago. All of a sudden, I can see what all of them see, and if they are thinking about us, I can hear those thoughts too." "Is that why I hadn't heard from you in a while, sweetie? You were busy concentrating?" "Yes, but it makes me really sleepy." "It's okay, honey. You rest now." "I can't. Their voices are getting louder and louder. I think they're getting really close, Mom." "Are you sure?" "Yes. They're almost here. I see a big blue marble in space. Isn't that where we are? On a planet called Earth?" "Yes, darling. That's our home. Planet Earth. How did you know the name of our planet?" "That's what they call it. But, Mom, you need to tell the doctor to hurry. The marble is getting bigger by the second. Dr. Monteroli, Emily asked in a frantic voice, turning her head and making eye contact. Yes, Emily. Are you in any pain? No, but I think you need to put me in water first, then try it, but you need to hurry. I knew it, the good-looking male nurse said. A frog in a pot of water. There's a tub and shower in the physician's break room. Let's get her in there, stat, Monteroli said. Emily felt the handsome nurse remove the air supply from her nose and watched him unclip the monitoring device from her finger. He turned his attention to the blood pressure cuff, unwrapping it quickly in a single motion. Veronica unhooked the IV line and draped the blanket over Emily before stepping back. Right on cue, the man scooped her up in his powerful arms, carrying her quickly toward the double doors. Emily assumed the doctor and the rest of the staff were following behind as they went through the exit. When she made eye contact with Derek in the hallway, he came running over, his eyes wide. So did Dwayne, Nora, and Jim Miller. What's going on? Where are you taking her? Nora asked. To the physician's break room. We're going to submerge her in water, Dr. Monteroli answered. Emily, are you okay? Derek said, zipping past Nora and trotting alongside the male nurse who was now jogging down the hallway. The knot in Emily's throat disappeared the instant she saw his gorgeous face up close. I'm okay, Derek, but they're almost here. You need to get as far away from here as possible. Go, now, before it's too late. Not a chance, Em. I'm not going anywhere. Please, Derek, they only want me and the baby, not you. Please take everyone away from here. I need to know you're all safe. He ignored her plea. Nora said they're in a spaceship. Is that right? Yeah, our son just told me. Are they coming here? Not sure, but probably. They always seem to find me, no matter what. Derek dropped back out of view, likely stunned by everything that was happening. Emily turned her head even farther to the right as her escort increased his speed down the corridor. She sucked in as much air as she could and yelled, They're almost here! You should all run! Save yourselves! Chapter 34. Emily caught a full view of the name tag hanging from the shirt of the male nurse carrying her to the physician's break room. His name was Jeremy. What a pretty name. I still like Julius better, but at least one of my questions has been answered, she thought. Too bad there are a million more to go. The handsome man worked his way forward through the huddling bodies that had raced ahead and taken position in the cramped bathroom. He bent over next to the tub and gently slid her naked body into the porcelain basin filling with water. When the water level reached the top of her neck, she could finally feel its warmth. It was soothing, a welcome change from the chilly, stale air circulating throughout the urgent care clinic. I need everyone except Nurse Veronica to please vacate the room, Dr. Monteroli said. I can't work with everyone crowding in like this. Nora, Dwayne, and Jim Miller went outside and stood watch just beyond the doorframe. Derek went with them, but not until after he bent down and kissed Emily on the forehead. Emily wanted to grab his hand and hold it to her heart, but she still couldn't move anything from the neck down. When he turned and walked away, the same constricting feeling from earlier took over her throat. Good luck, Miss Emily, Jeremy said, interrupting her gaze that had been focused on the sculptured perfection of Derek's behind. Jeremy's voice was deep, confident, and proud, which seemed to match the well-built man's aura and his square chin. All that was missing was a medieval suit of armor and a bloody sword with a plethora of kill notches on the handle. Then the casting would be complete. A white knight, she imagined, fighting for his queen. Emily hated the idea of anyone seeing her as a helpless damsel in distress, but given her current situation, that's exactly what she was. Jeremy promptly left the bathroom, pushing past Derek, Dwayne, and the others as he took the other male nurse with him. What was the measurement earlier? The doc asked Veronica while studying Emily's abdomen. 16 centimeters? I think we need to take another fundal height measurement. Why? Is something wrong? Emily asked. The doc didn't answer, nor did she look away from her fingers as they came together and were used to check the size of Emily's stomach. 20 centimeters, Dr. Monteroli said, now looking at Emily with her face stiff and brows pinched. We shouldn't be seeing a 30% increase in only a few minutes, or a few days for that matter. It should take weeks, which means as soon as we rid you of this substance, I'm going to order a series of tests to find out what's going on inside. That means a trip to Good Samaritan Hospital. They have much better equipment than we do here. Emily shook her head, needing to find a way to get the doc to listen to her.
I'm telling you, it's my son. Why won't you listen to me? I'm not making this up. He's not a normal child. He's growing very quickly and getting stronger and smarter by the minute. Trust me, if something was wrong inside, he would tell me. He's way more plugged in and aware than any of you know." Again, the doctor ignored her, bringing the portable pacemaker unit close to the tub. Monteroli held the 2 leads in her right hand, adjusting the slack on each of the pads until both were hanging the same length down from her grip. "Since I doubt these will adhere while submerged, I'm going to simply insert them into the water with a setting of 30. The water should carry the current evenly across your body and hopefully convince the material to release." Emily nodded, but the fear inside wouldn't let her speak. She didn't know if she should hold her breath or not, but she did anyway, taking in a full round of air in one massive gulp. Right then, her thoughts connected with those of Julius. She could see his handsome face in her mind, the same precious boy she'd seen in her dream earlier. Then the vision changed, bringing in a cute little puppy next to Julius, a tail-wagging red and white Alaskan husky with a green tennis ball in its mouth. Her son dropped to his knees and started petting the fluff ball. Emily felt a calming peace wash over her, allowing her to release the breath she'd just taken in the real world. "Julius, they're about to electrify the water, so let Mommy know if you feel anything, okay?" He looked up at her in the vision and nodded. "I will, Mom." A quick smile followed his answer. Then he wrapped a 2-armed hug around the animal's neck. "I'm going to call you Sheena." The vision faded quickly, bringing Emily back to reality. The instant the lead pads hit the water, the red mercury reacted, splitting apart and into 1,000 oval-shaped pieces. They looked like flat ink dots, and each of them began swimming across her skin using different random trajectories. When the first wave of the dots made it up to her cheek, a numbing feeling came with them and followed along as they moved across the bridge of her nose and down the side of her neck. It was obvious the electrical charge had sent the red material into a panic, but the goo still had hold of her. Emily told her arms and legs to move, but they wouldn't. "Try the next setting," she said, after Julius sent the suggestion into her mind. "Increasing now to 50, Dr. Monteroli announced. Emily watched the furious movement of red splotches stop all at once, like someone had hit the pause button on a remote control. A heartbeat later, the 1,000 tiny orbs started to shake across her skin, increasing the speed and intensity of their quakes with every tick of the clock. As the chaotic vibrations continued their buildup, she wondered if they were about to explode. There was no way to be sure what was happening, just that something was. It was also possible the red mercury was working to overcome the effects of the electrified water and would soon coalesce back into one continuous blob. "Mom," Julia said from inside the darkest shadows of her mind. "It's about to happen. I can feel it." Emily gasped when the red swarm stopped all of its movement and let go of her body. Each dot floated away from her body and bobbed on the surface like dead fish drifting atop the ocean. At that moment, all the feeling returned to her body, and so did the pain, covering her skin from the neck down. It felt like a million needles stabbing her all at once. It was almost as if the pain had been saving itself up ever since the red mercury had taken her hostage, and now it was free to attack her with a vengeance. "Ow!" she screamed, scrunching her face. "What's wrong?" the doctor asked. Emily wanted to answer, but she couldn't push through the agony and convince her lips and mouth to move properly. All she could muster was a series of painful grunts. Derek came running into the bathroom in a flash and nudged the doctor out of the way. He dropped to his knees next to the tub. Emily looked him in the eyes. She wanted to tell him to get her out of the water, but her lips still weren't working. She decided to send him a look of panic, hoping he'd know what to do. His hands came flying over the edge of the tub and dug deep into the water. She felt his arms slide under her body before he pulled her out of the swirling misery. Once she was free from the tub, he put her on the floor. Veronica covered her with a towel. "Let me take it from here," the doctor said, nestling in next to Derek. She started taking Emily's vitals with 2 fingers on the inside of her wrist. "Are you okay, Em? Talk to me," Derek demanded. The pain seemed to vanish the moment his words landed inside her ears. Her strength was returning, so she decided to say hello using his usual catchphrase. "Hey, ya babe." Hey, you beautiful, he answered with her usual words, showing a tentative smile on his lips. Thanks for getting me out of there. The pain was so intense I couldn't speak. Yeah, I could tell. The look on your face was epic. She grabbed his hand and kissed the back of it gently, then held it against her cheek. She needed to feel his warmth against her skin. The connection and his strength felt amazing. My handsome man came to rescue me. His voice was charged with confidence. That's what I'm supposed to do when my girl's in trouble, right? Nora stuck her head in the door. Sorry to interrupt this lovely reunion, but tick-tock. Emily was so wrapped up in the moment that she'd forgotten about the Orange Men and their ship. She locked eyes with Derek. Nora's right. Can you help me up? Hold on a minute, Dr. Monteroli said, now listening to Emily's heart with a stethoscope. When she was done, she brought her eyes down to Emily's stomach and held out a hand to Derek, pointing. Can you sit behind her, please? Derek did as he was asked. Then the doctor gently spun Emily around on the floor, aiming her back to Derek's chest. I need you to lean back, Emily. Just take it slow. Emily leaned back while looking down at her tummy. It was much larger than before, like something had triggered massive growth. She thought about it for a second. The only explanation she came up with was the electrical charges in the water. Maybe they'd amplified her son's rapid development. The doc used her two-fingered technique again. This time, the measurement covered a greater span. She's at 34. How can that be, doctor? The nurse asked. Monteroli didn't answer, obviously deep in thought. She put her hands on Emily's belly, feeling the area gently with the cup of her palms. How many times do I need to tell you? Emily said with attitude, hoping the two women would actually hear her this time. My baby's not a normal baby. He's growing really fast. I know you think it's fluid buildup or whatever, but it's not. I don't know how else to say it, but I think the electricity made him grow faster. Emily, dear, we need you to stay calm. Emily shot a fiery look at Derek. Help me up. I've had enough of this. You're right. It's time to jet, he said, standing up. He leaned forward and helped her off the floor. Monteroli and the nurse got to their feet as well. If you leave now, you're putting your baby at risk. We need to run more tests. Before Emily could answer with a hell no, an explosion rang out from somewhere down the hallway. They're here, Julia screamed in Emily's thoughts. Chapter 35. Emily's mind screamed at her legs to run faster as she followed Derek down the hallway to escape the advancing Orange Men and their energy blasts. Derek was leading her by the hand, but with the Ativan still in her system, she was having a hard time keeping up, especially with the blanket wrapped around her body. The wooziness was making her dizzy and even more short of breath than before, plus the whole baby on board thing wasn't helping either. An expectant mother normally eases into the demands and the related physical changes that happen during a typical 9-month pregnancy. However, with Julius and his accelerated growth, she hadn't been given that chance. Like everything else in her life, her pregnancy wasn't anywhere close to normal, and she needed to deal with it on the fly. You gotta slow down a little, Emily said, gasping for breath. Derek brought his head around. You need to push harder, Em. Don't stop. But I can't breathe. I need to rest a minute, she said, letting go of his hand. She stopped running, and so did he. Emily bent over and gasped for air while swinging her focus to the hallway behind her. Nora finally came around the corner and into view. So did Jim Miller and Dwayne, who were following 2 steps behind Nora. Miller was holding his pistol and Dwayne his shotgun. There was no sign of Dr. Monteroli or her staff. Miller took a defensive position on one side of the hallway with the pistol at the ready. Dwayne's back was against the opposite side with his shotgun held high. Keep moving, Miller said, before craning his neck to peek around the corner. I'm trying, Derek answered, grabbing Emily's hand again. Come on, he insisted, pulling her forward. Emily stumbled behind her boyfriend until they came upon a connecting corridor. Derek took it, turning right with Emily in tow. The new hall looked much like the previous one, antiseptic white with 4 doors and a seemingly endless string of overhead lights. Only this one wasn't devoid of patients. There was a smattering of women, children, and men milling about. Everyone run! Take cover! Derek yelled as his tug on Emily increased. One of the mothers screamed and didn't move at first, but eventually they all got the message and scattered. Derek, stop, Emily said when she passed the drinking fountain in the middle of the hall.
She ripped her hand free and stopped her feet, then bent over with one arm under her belly and the other holding onto the tuck of the blanket around her chest. Her lungs were burning with the intensity of the sun, and so too were the muscles in her thighs. "Please, Em, we gotta go."
"Can't. Need to rest,"
she said in a gasping whisper, forcing her lips to send the words out between breaths.
"Maybe you should just go on without me. I'm just slowing you down."
"No, Em. We all go together. I'm not leaving you here by yourself." Emily sucked in a handful of breaths, then answered when her vocal energy returned.
"But I can't run anymore. I'm so tired,"
she said, leaning her backside against the wall. All she wanted to do was lie down and go to sleep.
"Please, just take Nora and the rest of our friends and just go. It's me they want. Save yourself."
She slid down the wall until her butt hit the floor. Derek dropped down beside her and put one hand on her shoulder. His other hand was resting on the blanket covering her thigh. Nora caught up to them and knelt down in front of Emily.
"We can't stay here, Em." "I know, but I can't run anymore. You all just need to go on without me."
Before Nora could speak again, gunshots rang out and echoed down the hallway. Emily looked past Nora and saw both Miller and Dwayne diving around the corner and rolling across the floor. The men scrambled to their feet and took defensive positions again on either side of the hall. Miller began firing with his gun sights aimed down the previous hallway. Emily covered her ears as Dwayne joined in the firefight with the shotgun. Boom, boom, boom. "Get her out of here, now!" Miller screamed at Derek from the end of the hallway. He jammed a new magazine into the stock of his semi-auto handgun. Emily's heart skipped a few beats when Jim was hit with a pair of blasts from the Orange men's weapons. His body flew backward, smacking into the wall and sticking above the floor as a cocoon of blue energy encased his body.
"Mom, run,"
Julius said in her thoughts. His words came just as Derek got to his feet and yanked on her to get up. She pushed to her feet, still trying to find air to fuel her lungs. Nora had hold of Emily's left arm, helping her along as the three of them took off for the exit door dead ahead. It was maybe 20 feet away on the other side of the waiting area that was filled with patients waiting to see Dr. Monteroli and staff. Derek continued to yell at the gathering of patients across the waiting room, sending most of the bystanders into a panic. The exit door flew open ahead as 6 patients and their stampeding feet went through before Emily and company arrived. Derek held the door open for Emily to go through first on her own, then Nora. Emily passed under the sprawling red awning covering the entrance and found the sidewalk with her bare feet. The moment the early rising sun smacked her in the face, she noticed a few black shadows above her. She looked up and stopped running when she realized they were spaceships, 3 of them, each hovering silently like the world's gravity had just disappeared. She checked the busy street running from left to right, as well as the play park across the road. There were scores of other people around, and at least a dozen cars within a stone's throw, but none of them were moving, and the area was completely silent. There was a massive flock of pigeons frozen in mid-flight, as if they'd just taken off from the roof of the church 100 yards down on her right. Nora bumped into her from behind and then moved around and stood next to her, her eyes transfixed on the ships above. Her mouth was silent, but Derek's wasn't when he arrived last. He grabbed Emily's hand. "Come on, we can't stay here." Before Emily could redirect Derek's attention to the scene in front of them, 2 brilliant beams of blinding white light shot out from the center ship. She brought her hands up in a defensive position, letting go of the blanket covering her body. She tried to catch the energy and send it back at the ship, but the beams didn't hit her. They struck her friends instead, wrapping them with a static charge that crackled in the morning air. Derek's body fell to the ground and straightened like a pencil, and so did Nora's. Emily went to reach out for her friends to help, but stopped when Julius shouted,
"No, Mom, don't touch them."
Emily pulled her hand back.
"Why?"
Chapter 36. Before Emily heard an answer from her son about why she shouldn't help Derek and Nora, the entrance leading into the urgent care clinic filled with a brightness that stung her vision. She slammed her eyes shut and ducked her head out of instinct, expecting to be incapacitated by a beam of energy, like what had just happened to Nora and Derek. She waited a few seconds, but felt nothing.
"It's okay, Mom," You can open your eyes now, Julius said in a calm voice.
Emily feared an orange man would be looming over her when she opened her eyes, but that wasn't the case. Instead, she found herself in the mountains somewhere, standing on a metal platform with a massive rock wall blocking her view ahead. She looked down and found herself fully clothed in jeans, a plain white t-shirt, and a pair of Nike sneakers. Her ankles and feet were wrapped in a pair of pink socks. She hated pink, but at least she wasn't naked. Her focus traveled up the formation until its shape changed into a natural rock bridge, a massive one at that. It seemed to span the heavens from one end to the other. At that moment, her struggle to breathe vanished, and her heart filled with a peaceful calm. She wasn't sure what was going on, but her entire body was tingling with joy, and she didn't want the feeling to end.
"Hey, I know this place," Emily said,
bringing her attention down to a vision of Julius standing to her right. He looked to be about 7 years old, with thick black hair neatly combed from left to right. The part on the side was dead on straight, like he'd spent all day getting it perfect. All that was missing was a boy's business suit, and he'd look like a proper young gentleman. She couldn't help but beam an ear-to-ear smile at her son.
"When I connected with your thoughts, I saw that Great-Grandpa Julius used to take you here. Tonto Natural Bridge, right?" her son asked, pointing and craning his neck to look up. "Yeah, couple times. It's one of my favorite places in the whole world. How did we get here? To northern Arizona? Did we jump?" "No, we didn't jump." "Then what happened? How'd we get away? What happened to your father and the rest of our friends?" "Well, technically, we never left. I stopped time to bring us here so we can talk. I chose this place from your memories of Great-Grandpa," Julius said, blinking his stunning blue eyes at her. "Plus, I kind of wanted to see it for myself. I was hoping that by bringing you here, you'd stay calm."
"Well, it's working," Emily said, taking in the stunning views in every direction. She knew she should have been in an all-out panic and fearing for the safety of her friends at the moment, but she wasn't. It was as if none of her torturous life had ever happened, and the orange men weren't trying to hurt her and everyone she knew. Her body was still swimming with the Ativan pumped into her system by the IV, but this felt different from the wooziness she felt earlier. Right now, she was completely and utterly happy, almost euphoric. She brought her hands up and put them on Julius's plump cheeks, rubbing the soft of her thumbs across the pinkish-red glow of his skin. Her son was right. Being here did have a calming effect, but so did seeing his gorgeous little face. "I can't believe how big you're getting already."
"Mom, this isn't real. I'm not really this big."
"I know, honey. Don't remind me. I just want to enjoy the moment and remember what you look like, or what you will look like, before whatever is going to happen next."
"That's why I brought you here, Mom, to talk about what's going on."
"Okay, sweetheart. We can do that. We can talk. Let's start with how you stopped time."
"I don't know exactly. Somehow I can just do it."
"But wasn't time already stopped? Everything around us looked like it was frozen. I'm guessing by the orange men and their ships."
"It was, but I stopped time within time."
"Huh? How is that even possible?" Julius shrugged.
"It's hard to explain. It starts as a creepy feeling, like an evil shadow is about to jump on me from behind. When I turn around, it's right there in front of me, just hanging in space. It looks like a black marble, but it's really a small opening to some kind of energy tunnel, I think. When I crawl through it, time stops again. I'm not sure how it works, but I feel 100 times stronger when I do. I guess you'd call it a power surge, but that's not quite the right term. But anyway, when I go back through it, I'm in normal time again."
"So it's like slipping into sub-time."
"Sure, I guess. What's really cool is the super high power levels stay with me for a few minutes when I return to normal time, but then they go away."
"Wow, that's incredible."
"I know. Tell me about it. The whole process really wears me out."
"I could do a little of that right before a jump, but nothing like this. You're so much more powerful than me," she said, wanting to know more. "What else can you do?"
"Mom, we don't have time for a million questions. I can't keep us in here forever. I'm getting sleepy again." It might be the medicine the doctor gave me. It made me a little sleepy too. I know. I felt it earlier, but that's not what's making me tired. It's the connection with the Orange Men. That's why we need to talk before I lose control and we go back. Okay, talk about what? Their plans. But we already know about them and their plans. They've been hunting me across time and space, and now they're here for both of us. No, Mom. Only me. They don't want you. Sweetheart, I know you're super smart and have all these amazing powers, but there are some things that Mommy knows and you don't. But I do know, Mom. Now that all of the Orange Men are really close, I can see it in their thoughts. Something bad is about to happen. You really need to listen. The tranquility that had been warming every fiber of Emily's being disappeared as soon as the last few words left his mouth. Her chest tightened and her breathing became labored again. All the neurons in her mind suddenly came together in unison and focused as the brightness around them dimmed a bit. The stunning array of colors in the high desert tapestry began a slow fade, blurring together like a scene change in a Hollywood movie. Julius stumbled as his eyes rolled up, and so did his neck, looking like he was about to spin around and pass out. Emily caught him before he toppled over, keeping his back from falling onto the metal catwalk beneath their feet. Julius, honey, are you okay? Talk to Mommy. I'm right here, baby. His eyes opened, and a moment later, the beginnings of a smile appeared on his pink lips. The glow of the imaginary sun returned, and so did the sweeping rainbow of colors filling the landscape around them. She smiled, feeling the warmth of his essence in her arms. His eyes were locked onto hers, making her feel like a real mother for the first time since she'd gotten pregnant. Even though she could feel the thunder of her own heart beating wildly against her chest, she knew right then that everything was going to work out as it should. Emily gave him a series of baby kisses on the forehead and cheek. It's okay now. Mommy's not going to let anything happen to you. Ever. Julius pried her arms loose and stood up, looking like his old self, his old virtual self. They need my help, Mom, and you need to let me. Who? The aliens or Nora and the others? The aliens, Mom. But they're not aliens. Sure they are. I've seen them on their ship a long time ago. They have big ugly heads with sores all over their skin. But they're not aliens. They're humans. Humans? How can that be? Humans from the future. Didn't you ever wonder why they spoke English? Yeah, sure I did, but I figured it was from the telepathic link or something. Well, that isn't what's happening. They speak English because they're future humans. They've come back in time for me, for my genes and my DNA. Why? Because they're all sick and they blame us. But we didn't do anything to them. Why would they think that? Because in their minds, we're the intruders. We invaded their time and space. We made them all sick in the future. That's why they're here. For me. To find the cure to stop the epidemic that our family accidentally brought to them. 77 years from now is when it happens. What epidemic? We're not sick. No, we're not. But your great-great-grandson will be, and he won't even know it. With each new generation of our family, we get more and more powerful as our genes evolve. It all started with your mother and passed to you, then to me. Emily nodded while listening carefully. It was a lot to take in. Julius continued. The instant that Trent Julius Hart is born 77 years from now, he jumps immediately to the future, bringing with him a terrible plague, a plague they weren't ready for and don't know how to stop. There was a faint echo in her mind, like it was running in slow motion. She wanted to understand the words coming from his mouth, but each new revelation seemed to be even more incredible than the last. I don't understand. How can a newborn baby do any of that? The way I understand it, it's all about DNA and evolution. When genes evolve over time, they eventually mutate, sometimes radically. That's what happens when Trent is born. He carries a horrible new disease when he jumps into the future. That's why they are here. For me. I hold the key to saving all of humanity from a terrible death. Okay, if that's true, then why did they kill my mother and then experiment on me? None of that makes any sense. They were trying to tweak our family's genetic makeup to improve Trent's ability to produce the needed antibodies to fight the disease. Grandma's death was an accident. They never meant for that to happen. So was your ability to time jump. Somehow, their experiments triggered some latent evolutionary genes by accident, which is why you can time jump. That ability was supposed to start with my daughter and then get more powerful with her son, not start with you. And I suppose their accidents are why I can read minds. Well, sort of. Yes, and catch and return their energy beams. They are very scared of you, Mom. Well, they should be. I'm just trying to protect myself, and you. Any mother would. They have to know that. Yes, they do. And they're sorry for everything that's happened. But they're desperate. That's why they took all those chances with your DNA and Grandma's. So I take it that's why your abilities are even more powerful than mine. More of their accidents. Yes and no. Some of it is triggered evolution, and some of it is because of their science. But most of it is from you. I think it's called placental transfer. But in the end, they are just trying to save themselves and billions of other sick people any way they can. That still doesn't give them the right to hurt people and run horrible experiments on them. No, it doesn't, Mom. But time is running out for humanity, and that's why they've sent all 3 of their ships and all of their remaining Orange Men. They've been following you through time and watching, just waiting for the proper moment, which I think is right now. When you say watching and waiting, do you mean they've been studying me? Yes, you and a few others, but you're the most viable candidate, whatever that means. When I try to probe deeper, all I get back are the words downstream adjustments. The word adjustment conjured up a vision in Emily's mind. It was from the night when she was watching Nora and Dwayne's house while they were out of town, the same night when Derek found her in a trance at the front door, and the same night when she became pregnant. The vision changed to show an orange man standing behind her for almost half an hour, holding some kind of futuristic tool created by his briefcase. Right then, she knew what the phrase downstream adjustment meant. Oh my God, they've been hiding in the dark and secretly adjusting my DNA all along, like some kind of shadow game. That's why my abilities keep changing. Yes, I think so. I get these flashes from them, something about trying to speed up the process. That explains why you're growing so fast, honey. Their adjustments caused more accidents. Babies usually take 9 months, not a couple of days. They need to stop, because this whole thing is getting totally out of control. Yes, I think you're right, but none of that matters now. They are out of options and can't wait any longer. If we don't help them, then all the future humans will die. They only have enough power to return home one last time. So this is it. They can't come back. What do they want from us? They want me to go with them, back to the future.
Chapter 37.
There's no way I'm letting that happen. No way, Emily said in a high voice, ignoring the increasing tightness in her chest and throat. You have to, Mom. They need me to help them save the future, for everyone.
She took a few seconds to process what her son had just said.
Well, that's not our future. It's theirs. Our future is here, and I'm not giving you up to anyone for any reason. But it's the right thing to do, Mom. Isn't that what Grandma always said? Do the right thing?
Oh, so now you're going to turn my memories of my mother against me? She snapped, shaking her head. Emily brought her index finger up and wagged it at him.
Let me tell you right now, Julius Derek Hart, that's not how this is going to work. I'm the mother here, and I'm in charge. You need to stay out of my head. I don't want you crawling around in there anymore. There are some things that little boys should never know. Mommy's memories are her own. You stay out. You hear me?
There was a long pause before his head slumped down and his voice slowed.
Okay, I guess, if you say so.
Yes, I say so. He brought his eyes up and showed her a sad, pouty face.
But we still need to help them. I don't want them all to die.
Well, neither do I, but I'm not letting them take you. End of story. There has to be another way. I'm not letting anyone break up our family. I lost mine a long time ago, and I'm not letting you lose yours. That's something nobody should ever have to go through. Ever.
I know how much you miss Grandma, but sometimes we have to make sacrifices, right? To help others.
Emily remembered those words coming from her mother's lips, too. It was right after a Sunday Mass when Candy volunteered the two of them to help out serving meals at the homeless shelter for the upcoming Easter holiday. It was about a month before the night of the taking. Her mother was a seasoned expert at laying on the guilt trip. Most of the time, she'd use the "we all have to make sacrifices" speech to convince Emily to do something she didn't want to do, like spending her entire Sunday serving food to a bunch of smelly homeless people. Little did Emily know at the time that she would soon be one of those gross, down-on-their-luck outcasts, or that those same shelters and their wonderful volunteers would become a lifesaver. It was mind-boggling how one event could alter your whole perspective and your life forever. Regardless, Emily was still furious with Julius for crawling around inside her synapses again. "I thought I told you to stay out of my head." "I am staying out. I learned all that before." "Then you must also know that a mother does whatever it takes to keep her kids safe." "Yeah, that's why I wanted to talk to you here first, so you'd understand why I have to go with them." "No, that's never gonna happen. Families stick together, no matter what," Emily said. What her son was suggesting was noble and genuine. She was proud of him for trying to do the right thing and not be selfish, but her stomach was still nagging at her. Something wasn't quite right. She'd learned to trust her instincts over the years, especially while living on the run, and she wasn't about to start ignoring them now, not with her family and friends in danger from some time-traveling band of future humans. When you're older, Julius, you'll come to realize that people will lie to get what they want. I know, trust me, there's a lot of evil on this planet, both now and in the future. I don't trust these orange men or the others on those ships, not for a second. But I trust them, Mom. I can see it all in their thoughts. Right then, a new idea came roaring in Emily's brain. If she could somehow frame the words properly, Julius might understand what she needed to warn him about. "Let me ask you this, son. Can you read everyone's thoughts on the ship, or just the orange men's?" He looked away for a moment, his eyes darting in several directions before he answered. "I think just the orange men." She exhaled and started nodding like a school teacher who was about to reveal the final bonus answer on a pop quiz. "Well, that doesn't seem right, now does it?" "What do you mean?" "If they were being totally open and honest with you, they'd let you see everything, not just bits and pieces from some of them." Julius didn't respond. His nose was pinched, looking as though he was thinking it through. "Maybe they're just showing you what you want to see," Emily said, using sharp words to bring her point home. Julius nodded, albeit slowly. "So what you're saying is they are hiding things from me to make me do what they want me to do?" "Yes, this is exactly why you need to let Mommy make the decisions. You don't have the experience I do. Trust me, people will lie, cheat, and steal to help themselves and to protect the people they care about." "So, are you lying to me right now, Mom? You know, to protect me?" "I think you already know the answer to that question. After all, you've been in my head and seen what I've seen. You know how I feel about you. Mommy would never do that." "Yeah, I suppose you're right. But just so you know, I haven't seen everything. I've been poking around and learning what I can, but there's so much stuff in there. Some of it is out of order and kind of hard to follow." Emily was thankful her son hadn't seen it all. So many horrors. She'd never want her child to be exposed to harmful memories like that. It also meant he didn't know everything she did, at least not yet. She waited a few ticks before she continued, wanting to make sure he was paying attention. "Before, when I was going to help Nora and Derek, you told me to stop. Why?" "Because you would have been hurt. I don't think you have your powers anymore." Emily wasn't sure she'd heard him correctly. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" "I think the placental transfer took your powers and gave them to me." She blinked for a few seconds, letting the syllables soak in and register. Even though she'd heard the words clearly the second time, her mind was having a hard time accepting what they meant to her and everyone she knew. "So, I'm normal again?" He nodded. "That's why you haven't been able to start a jump or do that flash thing you do on people. I've been trying to figure it out all morning, but it only came to me a few minutes ago." Emily's knees lost their strength and wobbled before they buckled together.
Her backside hit the ground with a thud. "Mom, are you okay?" Julius asked, rushing to her side. Emily wanted to answer, but couldn't convince her mouth to speak, not with the sudden pain in her chest. It felt like someone was using a chainsaw to carve her heart down the middle. Her mind went into flash replay mode, remembering all of the lonely nights she'd spent hiding in the shadows of a dirty downtown alley, crying herself to sleep. Ever since the night of the taking, all she wanted was to be a normal teenager again. If Julius was right, then her wish might have just come true. She'd often imagined what it would feel like to be like everyone else and not be a freak. Back in those disgusting alleys, she figured if it ever happened, she'd start doing cartwheels and cry a river of happiness. But now that her powers were supposedly gone, rejoicing was not what she wanted to do. It was just the opposite. She could feel tears building inside, but they weren't happy tears. If her abilities were truly gone, then how was she going to protect her son and her friends against the orange men and the ugly heads on the ships? Her abilities had become such a big part of who and what she wasn't sure she could function without them. "Mom, what's wrong?" Time to change the subject, she decided, before Julius started probing her synapses again. Emily didn't want him to know she was scared and feeling vulnerable, otherwise he'd never listen to her. He needed to know she was in charge and had everything handled. Her legs found their strength again, moving under her and taking her to her feet. She shook off the feeling of dread. "What are they going to do if I refuse to let you go with them?" she asked, using her sternest, most motherly voice. Before Julius could answer, his face turned pale and his eyes rolled into the back of his head. Like before, the brilliance faded around her, and so did the scenery as her son's legs gave out. She went to catch him, but her arms came up empty when he vanished from sight. An instant later, Emily was back outside the urgent care clinic and facing the 3 ships hovering above. Once again, she was in her birthday suit, and her body was completely exposed to the world outside. Derek and Nora were still lying on the ground next to her, like corpses, not moving. Everything was just as it was before Julius pulled her into the vision. Her son was right. No time had passed. Somehow, he'd stopped time within time, an amazing feat by an amazing little boy. Emily bent down and grabbed the blanket at her feet, only a second before the doors behind her swung open. Out flew the posse of orange men. They scurried past her and came around in front, forming a skirmish line with their weapons in a firing position. Chapter 38. Emily backed away from the motionless bodies of Derek and Nora while keeping the orange men and their ships in front of her. Her hands checked the cinch at the top of the blanket. It was holding tight and tucked down as far as her fingers could reach. As long as she didn't sign up for a 100-yard dash, it shouldn't come loose. Her feet kept shuffling backwards until her backside bumped into the trash bin sitting along the side wall of the clinic. She knew she was cornered, outnumbered, and outgunned, but brought her hands up in a defensive position anyway. She needed the marauders to think she could still catch their beams and send them back. Otherwise, they'd certainly stampede and rip her son from her womb. Their fear of her abilities was her only advantage, and she needed to show resolve and confidence. "Mom, don't!" Julius screamed in her thoughts. Obviously, his fainting spell inside the dream world was virtual as well. "Shh, let Mommy handle this. I know what I'm doing." "But," he said, before she stopped listening to him. Emily craned her neck, looking up at the ships, then back at the orange men. "Stay back," she told the swarm, making eye contact with several of them. She didn't know who was in charge or who was listening, but it really didn't matter. If she yelled loud enough, they'd get the message. "You know what I can do, so stay back." She waited for a response while the faint hum of the ship's engines echoed off the buildings along the street. It sounded like one of those vibrating beds in a cheap hotel where the maids change the plastic sheets hourly, the kind of bed where you toss a quarter into the slot and hope it still works. After 10 seconds went by and nothing happened, she decided to press on with her demands. "I know you've been watching me, and I know what you want, but you can't have my son. Julius is mine, and I'm never letting you take him. You hear me? Never!" She looked over at the bodies of Derek and Nora, then added, "And I want my friends back, so undo whatever you did to them. Right now! I'm warning you!" Julius was frantic about something, chattering away in her thoughts again, but like before, she tuned him out. She addressed the enemy. "I'm going to count to 3, so you'd better return my friends, all of them, now, and they better not be hurt." The ship in the middle started to move forward, floating slowly toward Emily. She moved her hands over her head. If this was some kind of tactical maneuver, she was screwed. A girl who'd been stripped of her powers and only wearing a blanket was cannon fodder. "That's far enough! Now give me back my friends, and let us all go!" The ship continued its advance. Emily gulped, wondering if they knew she was completely at their mercy. The ship stopped a few seconds later, and a hatch opened along the underside of its hull. An intense light came out of the center of the opening, hitting her eyes with a swirling shower of brilliant white energy. She moved her hands closer together to block its blinding effect. The light seemed to have weight, pressing down on her hands and shoulders. She didn't know how long she could stand there and take it, but she decided not to move. Running away would only show weakness and give away her ruse. She cracked 2 fingers apart and peered through the tiny opening to take a peek and see what was going on. Almost as if the light didn't want her looking at it, it moved off her. Its aim was now on a section of concrete 10 feet away. A thick, fast-moving shadow raced down the beam and landed on the ground. The light switched off, so Emily brought her hands down and held them in front of her like a karate champion ready to start a match. "This is it," she thought. "We're all gonna die." "Mom," Julia said across the link, this time catching her attention. "Hang on a second. Mommy's a little busy right now." "But you need to listen. They have—" Before Julius could finish the sentence, she cut him off when the shadow came into focus and revealed a pair of people. The taller of the two was one of the future humans with sores across his face and neck, just like what she'd seen on the ship after her abduction. The man had one of the orange men's pistols, and it was pointed at a hostage who was much shorter than him. The captive was a young girl with pigtails and tears streaming down her cheeks. It took Emily's brain a second to catch up to what she was seeing, but when she did, she recognized the hostage. "Oh my God, Junie?" "Emily, help me, please," Junie cried out, pushing the words through her quivering lips. "I'm really scared." Emily felt the pressure in her heart triple to the point of explosion, but somehow she found the strength to keep herself together and not show weakness. "I know, baby girl, but it's going to be okay. I promise. I'm not going to let them hurt you." She locked eyes with the ugly head holding the gun, feeling her jaw clench and her chest fill with fury. "If you hurt her, I'll kill you." The man didn't respond. Rather, he looked up as another powerful light appeared from the ship. This one was wider than the first beam, landing to the right of Junie. It, too, deposited another set of shadows before it disappeared. When the delivery came into focus, Emily expected to see another ugly head with a gun, but didn't. All she saw were blue cocoons, 4 of them, each being held off the ground and vertical by some unknown force. Emily could see the faces inside. Her heart sank when she recognized them. The future humans had her friends, Dwayne, Jim Miller, Sheldon from the library, and even Schrody, the tabby cat who followed her everywhere. "No, no, no," Emily said, fighting back the rage clawing at her chest. 2 of the orange men on the far left moved forward. They took positions over the motionless bodies of Derek and Nora with their guns aimed at them. Their weapons were now pulsing red, something Emily hadn't seen before. So too was the gun being held on Junie. She figured the red flashes meant the guns were in kill mode and not set to only incapacitate like before. Julius took control of her thoughts as he spoke in her mind. "Mom, you have to let me go. They're gonna shoot all of your friends, starting with Junie. We can't let that happen. Please, Mom." "Julius, I can't let you go. I just can't." "But you have to. Before it's too late. We can't let them hurt anyone." "No, honey, I'm not giving you up," Emily said as she tried to stop the tears. But they came anyway, pouring out of her eyes with the force of a summer monsoon. Her hands began to shake, and so did her knees. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I can't. I love you too much." "They're not messing around, Mom. They're gonna do it. There's a countdown going on between the orange men. I can see it in their minds. It's at 42 and dropping." "Huh? 42? Why not 10? She asked, wondering why they were giving her such a long countdown. "I don't know. Maybe they want to give you enough time to do the right thing. I don't think they really want to kill everyone." The nagging pain in her gut intensified and grabbed her attention. She could feel the power of her logic returning to take control over her emotions. Her tears slowed and her breathing stabilized. Time to get tough, Em. A vision of her mom appeared in her brain, taking her back to the night of the taking, the night when the ugly heads kidnapped and killed her mom. In an instant, Emily ran through some of the facts from that horrible night on the torture ship, looking for any clue that might help her now. She was facing the most impossible decision of her life, and she needed to outthink these bastards. There had to be something she was missing. Emily took a deep breath and waited. Then it happened. Her mind locked on to a key fact, taking her down a new line of thinking. Her thoughts streamed to Julius. "If they can speak English, why aren't they talking? Don't their mouths work?" "Yeah, they do, but they only want to speak to me right now, in my head." Emily figured they weren't talking to her because they were afraid of what she could do and knew she wouldn't listen to anything they had to say. If she was right, then they were only communicating with Julius so they could take advantage of his inexperience. They must have been fooling him in some way, preying on his innocence. Just then, her mind showed her another memory of the ship's torture chamber. It was back when Emily was pinned to the wall and helpless. She knew the nightmare well, having seen it in her dreams countless times since. However, this time Julius was the one strapped to the table, not her mom. 3 tentacles were hanging from his back, and he was screaming in pain. That must have been what the ugly heads had planned for him. She was sure of it. They were lying to Julius and going to hurt him to get at his DNA. Emily thought she'd seen the entire vision, but then it changed to show his body being dumped into an unmarked grave. A horde of orange men and one of the ugly heads stood around the hole, staring down at his lifeless body. She snapped back to reality when Julius said, "Mom, it's time to surrender. We're running out of time to save your friends." Emily felt her hands start to lower, but she wasn't the one making them move. It was her son, and he was controlling her body against her will. "Julius, stop that!" "Sorry, Mom, but we can't let this continue. I'm putting your hands down now." His ability to control her body gave her a new idea, something she hadn't thought of before, but it all hinged on Julius and his advanced abilities. "Don't do that. They are lying to you." "No, Mom. I'm ending this." "Put my hands back up, young man. I'm not going to tell you again," she said in her thoughts, sounding like an angry mother scolding her kid. "You need to trust me right now. They're going to hurt you." Julius didn't answer. "Let me show you," Emily said, sending him several ghastly images of his impending torture and death. "This is what they are going to do to you. Everything they are telling you is a lie. They're trying to manipulate you into giving yourself up so they can dissect you and steal your DNA. You can't trust anything they say." There was a short pause before he spoke in her thoughts again. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I had no idea." "It's okay, baby. That's why little boys have mommies. It's our job to keep you safe from people like this," she said, feeling control return to her hands. She put them back where they were before, in a firm defensive position. "Now I need you to be really strong and push past their blocks. Try to reach into the minds of the ugly humans and find out which one is in charge. I need to know, right now." "Okay, I'll try." "Is the man with Junie their leader?" Julius grunted in her thoughts, then the link with him went silent. He came back a few moments later and said, "I did it, Mom. I can see what he's thinking. After they cure themselves, they plan to steal all my blood and bone marrow and use it with my DNA to create an army of even more powerful time jumpers. That way they don't have to use their expensive technology to control the timeline." "You were right. They are going to hurt me." "No, they won't. Not if we work together." "Is he the man in charge?" "Yep. He's telling everyone else what to do and controlling the countdown." "Where's it at now?" 19. Then we better hurry. I need you to start a jump. Why? Just do it and don't argue. We don't have time for a debate. I need you to follow my instructions exactly. Start a jump, honey, this very second. I just did, he answered with confidence fueling his words. Emily felt the jump tingle start in her spine. Now make sure it's a fast jump. We need it to come quickly. Julius hesitated before he answered. Okay, done. I just accelerated the process. Now what? Instead of me telling you, it's faster if I send you a stream of images, then you'll know exactly what I want you to do because the timing of this has to be perfect. If I don't have my powers anymore, you're going to have to use your advanced abilities and take control of my body. Are you ready? Uh-huh. Here it comes. Chapter 39. Julius waited for the last of his mother's action plan to arrive as a series of detailed images. She'd sent them step by step, the last of which was arriving now. He reviewed the final snapshot and was ready to carry out her wishes. He wanted to make her proud and keep everyone safe, but to do that, he needed to trust her and follow her instructions to the letter. When Ugly Head's countdown reached 5, the blue fire came as expected and began to engulf his mother's body. He could feel what his mom was feeling and see what she was seeing. Time began to slow down, just as his mother showed him it would. He focused all his thoughts on the inner lining of the blue fire's electrical grid. His mental connection with her eyes blurred for a second. Then it cleared, allowing him to see the border of the subatomic vortex that was forming in the real world outside. Mom called it the event horizon, and the blue fire's boundary covered her skin like a thin sheet of latex. He hadn't had a chance to search through her memories to learn what the term event horizon meant, but he knew it was important. Mom had learned about the theoretical science involved while doing research in the public library after her strange techie friend, Sheldon, sat with her for hours and taught her to use a computer. Normal time around them continued to slow at an accelerated pace until it stopped altogether. That was his cue to act. Julius uncoupled his thoughts from his mother's and waited for the creepy feeling to wash over him from behind. As soon as he felt it, he spun around in his mind and found himself staring at the pitch-black, marble-sized entrance to the energy tunnel. It was the darkest shadow he'd ever seen and hovering only a few inches in front of his nose. He pushed his thoughts outward, mentally crawling through the opening. A moment later, he felt the familiar surge of power energize his core, meaning he'd just stopped time within time. Mom called it slipping into subtime, and she wanted him to go there for a couple of reasons. First, it would magnify the power of his abilities 100-fold, both while he was inside subtime and for a few minutes after he returned to normal time. Second, she wanted him there in case the future humans had some way to track what was happening within the first layer of time stoppage. Mom was suspicious of everything when it came to the Orange Men and the Ugly Heads. He couldn't blame her. Not now, not after experiencing their lies and treachery firsthand. It was time to get moving, so he redirected his mind's eye to his mother and focused on the muscles within her legs. He connected with them, taking control and moving her in front of the Ugly Head who was about to shoot Junie. Julius used his mother's hand to grab the man's gun arm and turn it to the right. He had Mom lean in so he could see through her eyes, then adjust the weapon's sights so they'd fire on the next closest Orange Man. He moved her feet to the targeted Orange Man. Again, he adjusted the man's gun hand to point elsewhere. This time, its sights were trained on the man who was about to shoot Nora. The scene modifications continued as he took Mom to Nora's position and repositioned the Orange Man's weapon to target the man standing over his father's body. So far, so good, he thought, checking his work thus far. Ugly Head was going to shoot Orange Man 1, who in turn was going to shoot Orange Man 2. If everything was set right, then Orange Man 2 would shoot Orange Man 3. Julius continued moving through the scene and making adjustments, using his mother's legs and hands. Each time they stopped, he'd have her redirect the Orange Man's weapon to shoot the man next to him. After Julius took his mother to the final Orange Man, he had her aim the man's pistol at the spot along the wall where his mother had been standing when the blue fire first appeared. He used the trash bin as the focal point. There were a couple more things he needed to do before his mother's plan was set up and ready to be executed. First, he had his mom pick up Junie and move her out of harm's way.
Next, Derek's body and then Nora's were dragged by their feet until they were lying next to Junie. Mom's instructions told him to ignore their friends in the blue cocoons because she didn't think there was anything they could do for them. Not yet, anyway. The last step was to have Emily run back to the spot along the wall where they needed to be standing, by the trash bin, which she did. Once they were in the final position, he mentally crawled out of the second layer of time stoppage and back into normal time, where the pre-jump process was still unfolding. As expected, his body felt energized and unstoppable thanks to the extra power he'd carried back from his visit to subtime. Julius summoned all his energy and used it to reach out and stop the time jump before the blue fire whisked them away to the future. It worked, snuffing out the blue flames in less than a second. The instant time resumed at normal speed, his mother's consciousness connected with his. "Now, raise my hands and get ready," Mom said in his thoughts. The ugly man's thoughts changed, pushing the countdown from 1 to 0. All of the men from the future fired their energy weapons on cue. However, instead of hitting their respective hostages, the red energy beams hit a fellow traveler thanks to the aim adjustments made by Julius. He watched through his mother's eyes as the energy worked its way around the chain of orange men, zipping from man to man. Each time the beam jumped, it grew wider and turned an even darker shade of red. The beam made its way to the last orange man and went through him before shooting across at his mother's body. "Now catch it with my left hand like I showed you," she said. He put her hand up and felt the energy beam hit her skin with the force of a locomotive. Pain came with it, but Julius held his mother's palm vertical and firm. The energy tore inside his body and landed in his spine. He could feel his bones and muscles soaking up every ounce of energy. "Don't worry about me, just let it in," she told him after grunting. "Okay, now turn it around and let it go." Julius kept his mom's left palm raised as he brought her right hand down to unhook the blanket. The garment dropped, allowing him to bring her hand down and put her thumb against her navel. He spread her fingers apart and angled them in different directions as planned. A millisecond later, the energy he'd been absorbing flew out of her fingers in 4 independent energy beams. The energy shooting out from her index finger hit Uglyhead in the face. The other 3 fingers were aimed at the ships, sending the amplified electrical streams slamming into their respective holes and sticking like darts. "Are you sure this is going to work, Mom?" he said as the energy continued to pass through him and then travel to the ships. "Yes, just don't stop." Julius tightened his mental focus, drawing more and more power from the energy reserves he'd brought back from his stint in subtime. He could feel the intensity of the electricity bubbling as the power of the feedback circuit grew stronger with each passing second. The ugly man and his orange men were now glowing white-hot like the focal point of a welding torch. "Now be ready for the last step," Mom said. "Don't miss." Each of the ship's holes changed from a dark black to a bright red color, then to pink. The ships looked like they were trying to get away when they started climbing higher in the sky, but Julius was able to keep hitting them with energy by adjusting the aim of his mom's fingers. A few seconds ticked by before all the ships exploded in massive fireballs, releasing a billowing cloud of fire and debris. "Yes!" he screamed in his thoughts. "Now, finish them off," Mom said. Julius brought the aim of her fingers down from the ships and sent the 3 beams at the orange man he'd adjusted last. His aim was perfect, reversing the feedback loop through the chain of orange men. One by one, they blew apart and sent orange tissue and blood everywhere. Once they were all destroyed, Julius turned the collective energy from his mother's fingers at the ugly-headed man. His body was quickly overcome by the massive wave of energy, instantly doubling in size like a balloon being filled. A moment later, his body exploded in a spray of red. Julius turned off the energy feed and brought his mother's hands down. He'd planned to have her pick up the blanket to cover herself, but nixed that idea when he felt his mother's knees collapse. The 2 of them hit the ground with a thud. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked, hoping she would answer. There was only silence, but he could feel the thump of her heartbeat slowing a bit. "Mom?" "I'm here, darling. I'm just exhausted," she said in a downtrodden voice. "We did it, Mom. We really did." "No, honey. You did it. What about your friends? Are they okay?" "They're your friends, too," Mom answered, grabbing the blanket and wrapping herself in it. She craned her neck to give Julius a wider view of the area in front of the clinic. Julius could see his dad pushing to his feet. Nora was already sitting up. Both of them looked to be alive and unharmed. Whatever stasis field had been holding them on the ground must have been deactivated when the ships exploded. Junie was standing next to them, wiping tears from her rosy cheeks. When her eyes finally met Emily's, Junie let out a high-pitched screech, then said, "Emily!" Her feet tore across the cement, pounding at the ground in a full-on sprint. When Junie arrived, she dropped to her knees and wrapped a powerful hug around Emily's neck. Julius was still connected telepathically to his mother and could feel the strength of the tiny girl's grip against his mother's spine. "Em, I missed you so much," the girl said, her tears flowing again. "I missed you too, Junebug. Are you okay?" "Yeah, now that those awful men are gone," the girl said in a soft, emotional voice. She pulled out of the embrace and sniffed a couple of times before running her forearm across her cheek to catch some of her tears. "They were so gross." Emily wiped the remaining tears from Junie's face. "Yes, they were, but they're gone now. You're safe." "Who were they? What did they want?" Julius could sense that his mother wanted to tell Junie about him, but had decided against it. She didn't want to burden Junie with any more drama today. Emily moved her hand and adjusted the blanket around her midsection, wanting to conceal her pregnancy. Julius could hear the rustle of the material rubbing against her tummy as she bunched it up. "They wanted me, I'm afraid. At least they used to, before I was able to send them away." "I'm just glad they're gone. They smelled really bad." Julius felt something hit the walls of his mother's stomach. Then the sound of a low-pitched motor rattling outside. "Schrody?" Junie asked, sounding surprised. Julius watched his mother's eyes look down, showing an overview of her legs. A small furry animal was in the cradle of her lap, standing on all fours and looking up. Its long tail was pointed at the heavens and curved near the end. Emily moaned, putting her hand on the creature's arched body. "I missed you too, my little quantum kitty." She began stroking the animal's fluffy red and white fur from head to tail in long, slow movements. Junie's hand came into view, petting the cat along with Emily. "How did he get here, Em?" Junie asked. "I don't know, but I'm happy he's here and safe, like the rest of," she said, stopping in mid-sentence. Her eyes raised and swung to the right under the power of a sudden head spin. Julius felt her heart pick up steam. Dwayne, Jim Miller, and a tall, skinny guy were walking as a group toward Emily, albeit slowly. Julius felt a rush of excitement from his mother. It was mixed with a deep sense of relief. "What happened to the energy cocoons?" Julius asked in her thoughts. "When you destroyed their ships, you destroyed their technology too," she sent back. "You knew that would happen, didn't you? That's why you told me to ignore Dwayne and the others in the blue fields." "Yep, I was counting on it since I'd seen it happen before. It was back in Nora's kitchen when she blasted the control device on the table. If you take out their technology, their energy devices let go. I figured there was a reason." Derek, Nora, and the rest of the gang closed in around Emily. Nora took the cat away and stood aside as Dwayne wrapped Nora in his powerful arms. They gave each other a small peck on the lips, then her head dipped into the crux of his shoulder. Derek helped Emily to her feet, then planted a firm kiss on her lips. The tenderness of his touch melted her heart. When the kiss ended, Emily tucked her head against his broad chest like Nora had done with her husband. "What the hell happened here?" Jim Miller asked, his eyes studying the various piles of debris littering the street. Some were on fire, while others just showed twisted chunks of metal from the ships that disintegrated. "One second we're in the middle of a firefight in the clinic, and the next thing I know we're out here. Looks like a war zone." "It's a long story," Emily said, taking in a long, deep breath before exhaling. "Hey, Em. Long time no see," Sheldon said. Emily smiled at him, her heart filling with pressure. "I'm so sorry for all of this. I'm sure you have a million questions." "Yeah, but no worries. I'm just glad you're okay." Emily moved away from Derek to give Sheldon a hug. Her friend's shoulders were thinner than she remembered, but his extra height hadn't changed. "I'm afraid I forgot to bring you a pack of Twinkies." He let go, then shuffled back a step before lowering his head and stuffing his hands in his front pockets. His voice turned shy. "It's all good. I should probably give those things up anyway. You know, all that sugar." Derek cleared his throat, grabbing Emily's attention. She spun around, then he took her hand in his. "Did you do all this?" he asked, furrowing his brow in the process. She took his palm and put it in the crown of her belly, sending a chill into her spine. His touch felt like Christmas morning. "No, sweetie, your son did. Your beautiful, amazing baby boy saved us all." The end.
Hey, it's Emily. Thank you for sticking around to the very end. Without all my friends, including you, I never would have survived this entire ordeal. I'm so glad it's finally over, and we can all move forward with our lives in peace. Next up, it's Lethal Rain Book 1, another gripping end-of-the-world saga from the Master of Mayhem, USA Today bestselling author J.J. Falconer. Before you go, if you could please like this video and subscribe to this channel, we would appreciate it. Thank you for your support. Take care, everyone. I love you all.